Chapter 26. For a wizard, breaking a few bones isn't really a big deal. In the potions class the next day, Harry saw that Malfoy came to class well, which made him feel strangely better. This thought did not last long. After class, Malfoy mocked Harry for not answering Professor Snape's question, saying that his head was like a troll. Harry was so angry that he didn't throw him to death. Lauren was improving Snape's favorability and laying the foundation for the potion later. "Professor, is it better to squeeze the juice from the beans here and squeeze it with a knife than to slice it?" Lauren asked Snape, pointing to common potion material processing methods. Snape stopped arranging the equipment and looked into Lauren's eyes. "I admit, you do have some talent. But you can't hide your ambition from me. Don't try to get something out of me, Lauren Morgan." However, Snape still adhered to his duties as a potions professor. He gave Lauren a long list of books and asked him to find the answers on his own. Before that, use the content in the book as the standard. Lauren also looked at those eyes, like a pool of water in the abyss, without a trace of ripples. He said his words of rejecting you without any emotion. He stared straight at you, as if he could see the deepest part of your heart. It was almost suspected that Snape had used legilimency on him. Lauren didn't know how he got out of the classroom and admitted he was a little shaken. In the corridor, Harry told Ron about being chosen as the Seeker. Ron was also very happy. He taught Harry various Quidditch knowledge and arranged Harry's training plan in a matter-of-fact manner, with a look on his face. His smile almost burst into flames. However, it was quickly exposed by the Weasley twins that Ron's knowledge and training plan were all based on hearsay. He didn't even know that batters had several direct ways to attack without fouling, and some of them were simply wrong. Ron was still talking hard as he walked out of the courtyard. Harry was very worried that he would make a fool of himself. The Seeker didn't just need to be able to fly. He almost dominated the outcome of a game. Hermione suddenly came over and interrupted the conversation between the two. "I know Harry will be an excellent Quidditch player. This is in his blood." "Bloodline?" Harry asked doubtfully. Hermione led the two of them to the trophy display room, in front of the shield engraved with Seeker, James Potter, 1971. Ron shouted, "Oh, Harry, you never said you had a Seeker father." Harry laughed unconsciously. I don't know either. 20 years later, he became a Gryffindor player like his father. This coincidence made him feel a kind of companionship and warmth. The three of them were walking on the stairs, and Harry couldn't help laughing and joking to himself, "Even Hermione knows my parents better than I do." Hermione denied, "I just saw your father's name by the way." She did not say that Professor McGonagall was also a Quidditch player. This was not something that could not be said, but she did not intend to share it, as she wanted only herself to know. At this moment, the stairs suddenly swayed from side to side, then moved up and down. Feeling the familiar feeling of weightlessness, the three of them complained in unison, "This damn staircase." The stairs turned to a door on the 4th floor, and they pushed it open directly. They are not familiar with the rules of the stairs here yet, and they don't know how long they will be trapped if they don't get out early. Harry took the lead, and Hermione followed at the end. After entering the room, the environment suddenly became dark. In the center of the room was a statue with a weird posture, covered with spider silk, and it was eerie. "Does anyone think we're in the wrong place?" Ron shuddered. "This is a forbidden area on the 4th floor. Dumbledore emphasized when school started that we are not allowed to enter." Hermione spoke in a low voice, for fear of being discovered. "Meow." A harsh cat meowed, and a yellow-grey cat sprang out from behind the three of them. Harry reacted first. "It's Mrs. Norris, run." There is usually a Filch not far from Mrs. Norris, and being caught by him will not end well. Mrs. Norris chased three little wizards with a cat and ran around until they reached a locked door. The three of them were a little panicked and couldn't choose a way. Hermione took out her wand and raised her hand to cast the unlocking spell, "Open the Ilaho hole." "Well done!" Harry praised. The three of them quickly hid in the house and heard the cat's meow gradually disappearing. They leaned behind the door and panted for a while. It took a long time to recover. Three wizards were being chased by a cat, and Ron wanted to make a joke. Turning his head and seeing what was in the room, his expression became horrified. "Merlin's beard." Ron's voice was trembling. Ron's reaction made Harry and Hermione feel stagnant. Hearing the words, they slowly turned around and looked towards the center of the room. Their expressions also changed to panic. A monster-like big dog sat cross-legged behind them, its huge body almost filling the entire room, from floor to ceiling. 3 black heads, with sharp and scary teeth, one of which is about as big as their heads. The giant 3-headed dog kept spitting fishy saliva from its mouth, staring at the 3 men with vicious eyes. Ah! Hermione's voice was so sharp that it was distorted. The 3 of them opened the door and quickly escaped, leaving Lua who was still confused in the room. No wonder Dumbledore didn't allow us to come to the 4th floor. Ron was shocked, but why should such a thing be locked up in the school? Hermione breathed evenly and spoke in a harsh tone, "Don't you have eyes? Don't you see what it's standing on? That's a trap door, and it's obviously guarding something." Harry's eyes widened when he heard this. He remembered the small package Hagrid took out from Vault 713 and was about to say something. Hermione interrupted, "Okay, I'm going back. I advise you not to worry about that dog anymore, if you don't mind being bitten to death, or worse, being expelled from school." After that, she shook her hair. Gone. Ron thought she was a stupid girl, can't she tell what's worse? Back in the lounge, Harry kept thinking about the little bag and couldn't even concentrate on playing chess. Ron soon asked him to go away and give up his position. He wanted to fight Seamus and Dean one by one. Harry walked up to Lauren and began to express his doubts. What is Hagrid hiding? Is the 3-headed dog guarding the small bag he brought out? What is in the small bag? Lauren looked up from a stack of potions books taller than himself. Yes, he borrowed 5 books from Snape's book list. These 5 books are already taller than him sitting down. There are 25 books in the entire list, and he probably won't be able to read them before Christmas. Over. Harry was still chattering, and he had a gut feeling that there was something important in that bag. Lauren knew that Harry was about to enter the dungeon. "If I were you, I would go directly to Hagrid and ask." "Hagrid won't tell. He changed the subject last time." Harry felt helpless and began to analyze. "It is either extremely precious or extremely dangerous." Lauren added, "Or they're all taken. Why don't we just go and see what it is?" Lauren showed an expression like a devil tempting a lost deer. He throttled to the bottom, brakes were welded to death, and he accelerated. Harry was shocked. "Yes, it's another 3-headed dog. I have a way to deal with the 3-headed dog." "But, Dumbledore, we're not trying to steal something like this." Bang bang, bang bang, Harry heard his heart beating rapidly. Harry was a good student after all. Going on an adventure directly sounded like a good idea, but being expelled was obviously not a good outcome. He still planned to find out what was hidden first. He was fished out and signed a contract. Chapter 27. In the dining room, Harry was in a confused mood, with things crowding his head. When he got up in the morning, he realized belatedly, how did Lauren know about the 3-headed dog and how to deal with the 3-headed dog? What was this method? In response, Lauren tore the bread into pieces and put it into the pumpkin porridge, then added a spoonful of honey and stirred it well. His reply was, "I saw it in a book. I forgot which book it was." His tone was extremely perfunctory. After hearing this, Harry just wanted to slam the pumpkin porridge on Lauren's head. "Harry Potter, enjoy your last weekend at Hogwarts. I have written to my father, who is the governor of Hogwarts, that you are about to be expelled." Malfoy's provocative voice ringing, still annoying. "Now that you are back on the ground again, with your little friend by your side, you will be more courageous." Harry was not polite at all when his thoughts were interrupted. Professor McGonagall said that the fault of the matter was not his. He believed in Professor McGonagall more than Malfoy's father, the school director, whom he had never met. The Gryffindors around them laughed out loud at the right time, and the guest table was filled with teachers. Malfoy and his 2 followers did not dare to make any mistakes, so they had to keep a sullen face and squeeze their fingers. "I'd like to fight you alone any time," Malfoy said. "If you're okay with that, tonight. A duel between wizards. Just wands, how about that? I guess you haven't heard of wizard duels, right?" Ron stood up. "Of course we know, I will be his assistant." "Who is your assistant?" Malfoy ultimately chose the taller, more menacing-looking Crabbe. "At midnight, how about the trophy room?" After a few people made an agreement, Malfoy proudly took Crabbe and Goyle away. Ron told Harry about the wizard's duel. 2 people duelled with magic. If the assistant died, he would continue. However, both of them were in 1st grade and had only been in class for 2 weeks, so they could not use any powerful spells. It's best to throw away the wand, aim it at his nose, and punch him hard. This was Ron's final conclusion. Sorry to excuse you, I accidentally overheard what you and Malfoy were talking about. Hermione couldn't help interrupting the two of them. Malfoy is a pure blood. He might know some curses that you don't know about. In hand-to-hand combat, the two of you combined can't beat Crabbe. The most important thing is that you must not wander around the school at night. Think about how many points you will lose to Gryffindor if you are caught, and you will definitely be caught. Don't be too selfish. Lauren next to her burped beautifully. I think Hermione is right. But Harry and Ron felt that this had nothing to do with them at all, and they went back to the lounge to discuss the battle plan. At 11:30 in the evening, the dormitory became quiet. Ron and Harry quietly walked out of the dormitory, past the spiral staircase, and entered the common room. There were still some embers of fire flickering in the fireplace, and the armchair seemed to turn into a dark shadow. As they were about to reach the portrait aisle, they heard someone on the chair nearest to them say, "I can't believe you actually did this, Harry." A light popped on, and it was Hermione, wearing a pink nightgown and frowning. "I'm going to tell your brother Percy, he's a prefect." Harry and Ron looked at each other, ignored it, pushed away the portrait of the fat woman, and crawled out of the hole. Hermione was furious and followed out, "Don't you care at all about the scores in the Academy Cup? I earned them little by little from the professor." She spoke like an angry lioness. "This is none of your business." Harry felt that this person was too nosy. Suddenly, a whirring sound came from the darkness. "Mrs. Norris won't find out from the beginning, right?" Ron held his breath. It wasn't Mrs. Norris, it was Neville, curled up on the floor, sleeping soundly, and woke up as a few people approached. "Thank God, I lost the note with the password on it, and I've been locked out for a few hours." This was something that happened often before. It turned out that Harry and Lauren would check whether Neville had come back before going to bed. If not, they would come out and open the door to have a look. Occasionally, the Weasley brothers who came back from a night trip would bring Neville in. But after getting the memory ball from Neville, it never happened again, and it happened again today. "Keep your voice down, Neville, today's password is pig nose," Harry said as he turned to look at the portrait of the fat lady. The figures in the portrait at the door disappeared, leaving only some background on the canvas. He suppressed his voice and exclaimed, "The fat madam is here again." A few people were not very worried. The senior students told them that the fat madam often went out to visit the house when no one opened the door, and exchanged opera and bel canto singing skills with portraits in other places. "Usually you will be back in less than an hour. Ron and I are going to duel first. Hermione, keep an eye on Neville and stop meddling in our affairs." Harry made a plan. Hermione didn't agree. She wanted to see that the two of them would not be caught by Filch and would not violate any other school rules. Neville didn't want to be alone here either. In the end, the four of them decided to go together to prevent Malfoy from bullying others. A group of people took advantage of the dim light and crept forward, holding their breath and not daring to gasp loudly. Even so, the journey was uneven, with exclamations heard from time to time. The bloody barrow scares Neville every time, as does Sir Nicholas, who deliberately hangs upside down from the ceiling with his head hanging down. Neville wanted to curse when he saw it. In the end, the four people arrived at the prize showroom without any danger. The showroom was dark at night, and the gilt trophies and medals reflected sporadic light, and the outline of the object could barely be seen clearly. Lauren, who had been waiting behind the display cabinet for a long time, finally saw a few people, but he made no sound. The four of them moved close to the wall, eyes on the doors at either end of the room, Harry holding his wand in case Malfoy burst in. After a long time, there was still no movement. Lauren held his chin in his hand, walked to them, and made a guess. "Do you think Malfoy is deliberately teasing you too?" There was a sudden sound from a place where no one thought there was anyone. The four people in the room suddenly became frightened and looked at Lauren. "Why are you here?" Lauren made an aggrieved expression. "If you don't take me with you on your team-building night tour, I will come by myself." Hermione was going crazy. 5 Gryffindors were traveling together at night. If they were caught, their points in the House Cup would be deducted. Harry knew it wouldn't be that simple. What happened? Lauren then half-truthfully told what he had done. "I heard Malfoy's plan in the bathroom. They plan to trick you here, and then report you to Filch for your night walks to teach you a lesson. So during dinner, I told Malfoy that you changed the duel location to the first floor." Ron shouted angrily, "Despicable Malfoy, so despicable, you don't follow the rules of wizard duels at all. Lauren, why didn't you just tell me about this? Harry was also very angry, he was almost fooled like a fool. Hermione began to scold Harry and Ron, I knew it, if it weren't for Lauren, you two simple-minded guys would definitely let us deduct points. I think night swimming is very interesting. Lauren took out some nuts and handed them to a few people, we just haven't been on a night swimming yet, so we'll take this opportunity. Such words, such behavior, and nut snacks shocked several people. Why can you confidently say that you want to go out at night? And he pulled us together. Why are you so well prepared? There are even snacks. Chapter 28. The duel couldn't go on anymore, so Hermione tried to ask a few people to go back to the entrance of the lounge and wait for the fat lady to come back. Everyone goes back to their dormitories and goes to bed early. Harry and Ron looked at each other with ambiguous expressions on their faces. The two were very excited about the night out, and the twins had shown off in front of them many times. I can't go back now anyway, so why not go on a great adventure? Whether it was a night out or going back to the dormitory, Neville didn't have any inclination. He just didn't want to be alone and would follow wherever there were more people. Let's go. Go to the restricted area of the library first. Lauren's words made Hermione's heart beat fast. She didn't want to read the books in the restricted area, she just wanted to follow them to prevent Lauren from making bigger mistakes. The remaining 3 people quickly followed suit. Lauren led the team to the second floor, carefully bypassed the 2 fighting armors, and arrived at the library. The library closed at 8 o'clock, but the door was unlocked. When pushed gently, the wooden door panel made a squeak sound. Lauren glanced around and saw that the library was dark. Lauren led a few people inside and then gently closed the door. After looking around, Lauren stepped forward to light a lamp on the shelf and walked with it through the rows of bookshelves. The other 4 people tightly surrounded Lauren. The forbidden book area is at the back of the library. They lightly stepped over the rope that separated the forbidden book area, held up the lamp, and browsed the titles on the bookshelves. The Birth of a Curse. Driving Soul. The Most Painful Torture. Few people want to touch these books, the titles look very evil. Advanced Dark Arts. When Harry read this book, Harry's head suddenly flashed with pain from a needle prick, but it passed quickly. The last few people took out a book of powerful potions and looked around. The names of various potions in the catalogue were dazzling, including demulcents, truth serum, and love potions. Harry wondered if Hagrid would know the answers to his questions if he gave him some Verita serum. But Harry quickly realized that Hagrid was his friend, how could he have such an idea? It was really confusing. Seeing the beauty potion, Hermione wondered if it would be useful for her teeth. At the end of the book is the elixir of good fortune. Its efficacy is that the person who takes it will have good luck for a period of time and be successful in whatever they do. Several people who read it exclaimed. But I just exclaimed that I had no idea of making it myself. Most of the 5 people above had never seen or heard of the materials above. The processing method is even more unbelievable. It takes 6 months to brew the fulling elixir. A few people can only imagine the effects and get addicted. Will we learn these potions in the future? Neville sighed. Don't think about it. These are in the restricted area. We can't learn them. Can you imagine Professor Snape teaching us how to make love potions? Hermione quickly objected. Several people thought about the love potion, then thought about Snape's gloomy face, and shook their heads in unison. Should we read another book? Harry thought of the book Advanced Dark Arts. Lauren didn't agree. It was impossible to read books in the library for the first night out. A good student travels at night, and travels at night to read a book all night. Isn't this a kind of? Ron was just about to ask what to do next when Peeves' sharp voice suddenly came from outside, "Come on, Filch, come and catch me." Then there was a crackling sound, like Peeves hitting Filch with something. If anything, Filch is out there, and if he gets caught, he'll get 5 expulsion notices. The 5 of them were close together, and they could hear each other's breathing. Ron and Neville's minds went blank, and they were already in a daze. "SHH." Lauren said to stop talking, and he quickly blew off the lamp on his hand. He led a few people to walk out of the restricted book area and hid behind the first bookshelf after entering the door. Filch did not chase Peeves. He knew that the more he chased, the prouder Peeves would become and that if he ignored him, he would soon stop. The Slytherin bad boy lied to himself that there was someone walking at night on the first floor, but he ended up waiting for a long time in vain. To lure the tiger away from the mountain, the Weasley twins also used this trick in the first grade. They hadn't seen each other for a long time, and this time they were tricked by the new students. Filch thought that the freshmen's night outing would definitely be in the forbidden book area. He left Mrs. Norris on the first floor just in case. Peeves ran away, and Filch opened the library door and began to look. The library is lined with rows of bookshelves blocking the view, and the light is even dim at night. The restricted book area was at the back of the library. The five of them took advantage of Filch to walk towards the back, hid behind another row of bookshelves, staggered away from Filch, and slipped out of the library smoothly. Without stopping, he ran all the way to find an abandoned classroom, got into it, and closed the door. The five of them could hear each other's hearts pounding. It was the first time in their lives that they had experienced such an exciting thing, and they almost might have been dropped out of school. They looked at each other, panting and smiling sincerely. From this moment on, the five of them became friends. When you and someone experience an event together, you can't help but have a good feeling between you, and a night out in the forbidden book area and escaping from the administrator is such an event. After calming down, a few people began to look at this abandoned classroom. It is the same as other classrooms in Hogwarts, but many desks and chairs are piled against the wall, showing a large dark shadow, and there is an upside-down wastebasket next to it. The most eye-catching thing is the mirror in the middle of the room. This is a very majestic mirror, reaching to the ceiling, with a golden frame and two claw-shaped feet at the bottom. The top is engraved with Aristella Ahiru Idubi Cafulo Ideon Voorhees. Lauren read out the words at the top. This spelling made Hermione quickly discover the pattern and read it backwards. I am not your face, but the desire in your heart. What do you mean? Ron asked. No one answered, everyone looked at the mirror. Ron stood directly in front of the mirror and exclaimed, oh! I saw that I had grown up a bit and became the president of the student body. I was also the captain of the Quidditch team, holding the college cup and the Quidditch cup in my hand. This is a mirror that can reflect the future. Ron was obsessed with it, showing a silly smile. The others only saw Ron's shadow nearby, and quickly realized that it was a matter of location. They worked together to push Ron away, who was unwilling to move, ignoring his protests, and took turns checking the mirror. Harry saw his family and parents, more than a dozen people standing behind him, their eyebrows were somewhat similar to his. Hermione saw that all her grades were excellent, and her parents and Professor McGonagall were praising her. When Neville saw that his parents were healthy and surrounded by his grandmother, he burst into tears. Several people felt strange, waiting for Lauren to tell Neville's parents who were tortured by Death Eaters and became insane, and were still in St. Mungo's sanatorium. Everyone felt a little sad, so they moved Neville away from the mirror and stayed with him quietly, waiting for him to calm down. Lauren never imagined that what he saw was an internet cafe box built by the Room of Requirement, with Grandpa Bates sitting on the sofa. He almost screamed. It must be that the mirror of Arist couldn't penetrate his heart, just like the Sorting Hat couldn't penetrate his memory. It couldn't see his desire, so it combined Grandpa Bates and the internet cafe. Hermione asked Lauren what he saw, and he only said he saw relatives. Except for Harry, no one paid much attention to the reflection in the mirror. Several people stayed with him until late at night, but Harry still didn't want to leave. In the end, he was still too sleepy, so Lauren asked several people to take Harry back to the dormitory. Lauren walked to the end and looked into the corner as he closed the door. There was a light group that looked like an adult's shadow, flashing with a blazing red light. It almost blinded Lauren the moment he entered the door. The original plot here flashes the previous scene of Lauren's parents. Lauren has no special reaction. Some friends think this is unreasonable. I thought it made sense, so I changed it. However, the foreshadowing of the memory would not be dug up until the second grade, so I just changed the expression and the plot would not change. If you readers think there are any problems elsewhere, be sure to point them out, thank you. Chapter 29. Lauren could never have imagined that 5 minutes ago he was in Hogwarts and now he was walking on the streets of Devon. It had just rained, and there was a moist smell in the air. In the morning, Professor McGonagall found Lauren in the library and took him to see Dumbledore. Lauren thought that something happened to Peter Pettigrew, but in the blink of an eye, Dumbledore brought him here. Nico wants to see you. Dumbledore took a deep breath happily, enjoying the weather. Of course Lauren knew who Dumbledore was talking about. Nicola Flamel? Why do you want to see me? He doesn't want his inheritance to be sealed for too long. When he met you in Hampshire, he knew that you would go to Hogwarts, so he asked me to take a good look at what kind of child you are. He said, if I think you can, I will take you there. But if you are not suitable, you will have to explore the mysteries of those 2 books on your own. Dumbledore told Lauren the reason as he led Lauren forward. So he really sold me those 2 books. Lauren knew that Dumbledore already knew that he had the general understanding of hieroglyphs and the Book of Abraham in his hands, and he was still not sure whether the person he met in the town was Nico Flamel. If so, why did Nico Flamel go to that remote town, set up a bookstall, and sell books to Lauren at a price that was just enough for him to pay? Why don't you wait and ask him in person later? Dumbledore seemed to sense that Lauren had more than one question in his mind, and he meant something. Then why now? Without any recruitment, Nico suddenly wanted to see him, and Lauren didn't believe that Dumbledore was not involved. Of course not just now, Lauren. You have proven yourself since you told me about Banban, but you brought me more surprises later. Be willing to trust, have a yearning for knowledge, value friendship, and most importantly, have love in your heart. These are precious qualities. After experiencing what happened to Tom, Dumbledore became more cautious and at the same time paid more attention to examining the students' hearts. Dispelling darkness and leading to light is what a qualified principal should do. Lauren curled his lips. It was obviously a surveillance investigation, but it turned out that he seemed serious when he said this. The person behind the mirror last night was definitely Dumbledore, so full of magic that he almost blinded Lauren. He probably heard that Lauren saw relatives in the mirror of East, so he made up his mind. Although sometimes, a little naughty. Dumbledore added. The 2 stopped in front of a small courtyard. He stepped forward and pressed the doorbell. There's nothing magical about it, just like every other Muggle house on the street. There is a green lawn in the courtyard and the windows are kept spotless. The door was opened by an old woman. Dumbledore stepped forward and gently touched her cheek. Long time no see. Pernell. The woman nodded and smiled softly at Lauren behind Dumbledore. Come in quickly. She turned sideways to welcome the 2 of them in. Walking through the courtyard and entering the house, the living room has a normal Muggle family sofa, color TV, and refrigerator. The old white-haired bookseller that Lauren had met before was sitting on the sofa watching TV, and an opera was playing. The old man looked up at Lauren, with a gentle smile on his face. I just said we would meet again. Pernell invited the 2 of them to sit down, made black tea, and went to the back room. Dumbledore sat quietly next to him, as if all this had nothing to do with him, watching the opera on the TV with interest. Hello, sir. Looking at those eyes, Lauren had a lot to ask, but he didn't know where to start. Nico saw Lauren's doubts, but didn't mention it and started talking on his own. I'm going to tell a long story, some of which you may have heard. The Black Death was raging in Europe in the 14th century. Nico Flamel graduated from Beauxbatons and obtained the Book of Abraham under the guidance of a mysterious man in his dream. He spent decades researching but found almost nothing. I read the contents of the book with the help of a Hebrew scholar. There is a severe curse attached to the Book of Abraham. Except for the high priests and scribes, anyone who looks at it will bring death. I thought that I could avoid this curse by relaying it. Such an idea is really arrogant. I hope you will remember this lesson and don't leak the contents of the book to others, or be careful to bring disaster to others. After the Hebrew scholar died, Nico Flamel refined the Philosopher's Stone by chance. Although it is incomplete, it has been able to turn stone into gold and prepare the elixir of longevity. It's just immortality. My body is still aging normally, and my bones will break if I don't pay attention. At this point, the old man laughed, as if it was something interesting. 700 years is long enough, and he has lived enough. Nico had already planned to return to France with his wife to rest in peace some time later, after arranging the funeral arrangements. Until then, Nico wants to pass on his knowledge. After hundreds of years of exploration, he has made achievements in many aspects, not just the magic stone. You know, given enough time, anyone can become a scholar. Nico compiled the contents of alchemy, other knowledge, travel notes, and autobiography that he had discovered over the past hundreds of years, and finally compiled it into a comprehensive interpretation of pictographic symbols. I originally planned to put this book in the Beauxbatons library, hoping that sooner or later someone would discover it and continue exploring along the existing path. As for the cursed book, fate will have its own plans. This plan lasted until a year ago, when Nico dreamed of the mysterious man from 600 years ago, asking him to go to Hampshire and pass the book to a 10-year-old child. Nico thought it was fate and he chose a small town at random. Selling books like a hawker, I plan to entrust the 2 books to the lucky person and let the lucky person explore on his own. After all, you will not be short of time if you have the magic stone. Not long after we sat down, before finishing a cup of coffee, we met Lauren. Just like 600 years ago, Lauren was also engaged in some copying work, just like fate. Nico's voice suddenly rose, and he looked very excited. After selling the book, Nico didn't relax. Lauren was so young that he didn't know if Lauren could make it to where he stopped. Nico didn't want the people behind him to be like him, going round and finally refining a semi-finished product. That would be a pity. It might even be worse. After all, looking back at the process of refining the magic stone, it was full of luck and cannot be replicated. You know, older men always think about things and hesitate. Nico smiled happily. The last time he did something outrageous was decades ago. Finally, please Dumbledore, if Lauren is a suitable candidate, bring him here, and I will give this lucky boy a little help. As he said that, Nico Flamel took out a picture from his pocket, like a picture of a chocolate frog, take it back and put it on the cover of an introduction to pictograms. It will save you some detours. Lauren reached out and took it. On it was a portrait of Nico in his youth, with his eyes closed and unable to move. We are not masters and disciples. We have no obligations to each other. We are just a small help from a pioneer to a follower. If you appreciate this small help, help me take care of Beau's batons. Finally, you have to remember that the key to making the magic stone is to redeem a desperate soul. Chapter 30. What? Redemption, despair, soul, I clearly know every word, but when combined, I seem to be illiterate. Lauren's doubts were not answered. After explaining something, Dumbledore and Nico exchanged pleasantries and left with Lauren. Principal, I have some questions. The 2 walked on the wet street again. Lauren just followed Dumbledore blankly, his thoughts were confused. It is every teacher's duty to answer students' questions, isn't it? Dumbledore seemed to be on an outing, enjoying the weather and environment, and his tone was very pleasant. Why did Mr. Nico Flamel dream that the mysterious man said give me the book? Lauren, there are still many things in the magical world that are difficult to explain, and prophecies are one of them. Most prophecies are very obscure and have unknown directions, but there are some exceptions. You mean, Mr. Flamel actually made a prophecy? Lauren asked doubtfully. To be precise, he passively made a prophecy. Nico has the talent for prophecy, but prophecies are always difficult to control. You will also learn prophecy-related courses in the future. Professor Trelawney in the divination class is an excellent prophet. Lauren ignored the last sentence and continued to ask, why is it that he is clearly helping me, but he seems to be deliberately alienating me? Dumbledore touched Lauren's head. This is not your problem, Lauren. People involved in the prophecy should stay away or ignore the content of the prophecy, otherwise it will bring unimaginable consequences. Dumbledore thought of some past events, and sometimes the prophecy itself contributed to the outcome of the prophecy. I don't know what to do, Principal Dumbledore. Lauren was still confused. There were gradually more puddles ahead, and Dumbledore took Lauren's hand. Study with peace of mind and do your homework, that's about it. Lauren had a look on his face as if he didn't think he could lie to me because I was a child, and grinned at Dumbledore. Ouch. He then asked, what is the redemption of despairing souls? Dumbledore was very patient and always spoke calmly. Lauren, you have to know that being older does not mean knowing everything. However, when the time comes, I can give you some advice. You can just say that you don't know either. Lauren changed the subject. Has the matter of Peter Pettigrew come to an end? Dumbledore did not hide anything and began to talk about the progress of the case. Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge originally believed that the culprit was Sirius. As for Peter hiding in the Weasley family, it was another case. But with the help of Moody, an old friend in Dumbledore's mouth, Pettigrew admitted that he had surrendered to the Dark Lord 10 years ago, blew up the streets, and took the opportunity to fake his death. In fact, the matter was much more complicated than what Dumbledore told. Pettigrew originally insisted that he was hiding from the Death Eaters at the Weasleys' house. He believed that the remnants of the Dark Lord were still active and wanted to kill him. Moody saw Pettigrew's guilty conscience and flaws, and interrogated Pettigrew alone all afternoon, in an empty room at the deepest part of the Ministry of Magic. According to the Auror on duty, Pettigrew was quibbling loudly when he first entered, but his quibbles soon turned into wails. Within 5 minutes, Pettigrew began to beg for mercy, but he didn't hear Moody ask any questions. There was only wailing in the room, which lasted for several hours. Finally, when a new Auror came in to ask Moody to have dinner, Pettigrew, with snot and tears in his eyes, begged to let the lunatic stay away from him, and quickly revealed everything that happened that year. Moody left the rest to others, muttering as he exited the room, "I thought he was a tough guy, bah, cowardly scum." The strange thing is that Pettigrew didn't have any scars on his body afterwards, and the Ministry of Magic didn't detect what magic Moody had used. The result of the flashback spell was that Moody had used several fluorescent spells a day ago. The Aurors immediately interrogated another person involved in the old case, Sirius. Sirius was very uncooperative at first. He didn't say a word during the whole process, his eyes were as hollow as a dead person. Some Aurors thought that the Soul Eater had sucked him stupid, but after learning that Pettigrew had been arrested, Sirius suddenly became excited, as if he had been reborn, and quickly explained the case, his confession, and Pettigrew's arrest. Basically the same for Dwarf Stars. Fudge was convinced that this was an unjust case left by the previous minister. Helping find the real culprit and rehabilitate Sirius would help improve his reputation, and maybe the Black family would donate a large sum of galleons to the ministry. However, Dumbledore didn't tell Lauren this. He just sighed, "There was a period of chaos after the war, and I was a little negligent regarding Sirius." There was guilt in his tone. At that time, he was busy dealing with various matters, appeasing the families of the victims, punishing the Death Eaters, and negotiating with some pure-blood families to ask them to contribute funds to compensate the victims and rebuild after the war. Sirius was unjustly imprisoned, largely because of his own doing. He smiled like a pervert at the scene of the crime, did not defend himself after being arrested, and ended up going directly to jail. The final result is that there will be a public trial next Wednesday to announce Pettigrew's punishment. Sirius should be able to regain his freedom by then. Lauren thought the result was very good, and Harry would be very happy, except that Ron's chestnut wand should be missing. After talking all the way, Dumbledore finally brought Lauren to a candy store. At first Lauren thought this might be some kind of secret liaison office of the Ministry of Magic, just when Lauren was planning to see what kind of ritual Dumbledore would use to enter a secret base. Dumbledore skillfully took out the pound and handed it to the clerk, "Still the same, put a little of everything on it, and put some more hazelnut chocolate." The clerk was packing candies while chatting with Dumbledore, looking very familiar with him. Lauren's jaw dropped to the floor. "You took me so far just to buy candy. If you are over 100 years old, why should you be so naive?" Dumbledore took the packed candy bag and saw Lauren's mouth opened in surprise. He picked up a piece of mint candy and put it into Lauren's mouth. "Muggle candies also have a different flavor. I love them the most. Hazelnut chocolate here." The refreshing and cool aroma suddenly spread around the tongue, and the saliva was suddenly seduced and secreted crazily. Lauren quickly closed his mouth and sipped the sweetness of the candy. Finally, the two of them came to a deserted alley. Dumbledore was holding a candy bag in one hand and holding Lauren in the other. He muttered a spell that Lauren had never heard before, and the two of them instantly returned to Hogwarts Castle. Inside, in the principal's office. In the office, Lauren saw a bird with fiery red feathers, Fawkes the Phoenix. Although there is a golden feather, the overall look is still ugly, Lauren thought secretly. Fawkes, who was parked on Dumbledore's desk, suddenly shouted chirp to Lauren. The sound was not like any other bird that Lauren knew, but Lauren somehow understood that it was scolding him. "Goodbye, Principal." Lauren quickly ran away. If he didn't leave, he would be beaten by a bird. Dumbledore looked at Lauren running out, smiled and picked up a piece of candy and fed it to Fawkes. "Well, he is still just a child." He smoothed the phoenix's feathers with his hands and wiped the frosting powder on his hands. Now Fawkes shouted at Dumbledore too. Chapter 31. There were not many people in the Gryffindor lounge. Lauren said hello to the people he knew, then returned to the dormitory and took out the black suitcase from under the bed. The elves clean it every day, and there is no dust on the box. Pulling out the two books at the bottom of the box, Lauren sat cross-legged on the carpet in front of the window and looked at them carefully in the sunlight. The cover page of An Introduction to Hieroglyphic Symbols is dark as a hole, with only a simple layout of the title of the book and Nico's signature in the lower right corner, without any grooves or anything like that. He took out the small picture card that Nico gave him. The paper was thicker than ordinary parchment paper and had a frosted texture. It was close to the business cards printed in the Muggle world. The background color was pure black. In the picture, the young Nico Flamel squinted his eyes, as if he was resting his mind. Lauren placed the picture right in the center of the cover of an introduction to pictograms. Red, blue, green and yellow light paths flow out from the edges of the picture. The flowing light rays start from the four sides of the picture, extend out, and mix with each other, but the light paths do not intersect. It looks a bit sci-fi. When the light path spread to the entire book, Nico Flamel on the picture opened his eyes, a pair of silver eyes shining with magic symbols. Not sure if it was due to the change in lighting, Lauren felt that Nico's hair in the portrait had also turned a bit whiter. There are many magical portraits in Hogwarts. They can move freely among the portraits and communicate with others. The person Lauren came into contact with the most was the fat lady at the door of the lounge. He tried to communicate with Nico in the portrait. "Hello? Can we chat?" The eyes of the person in the portrait followed Lauren's mouth movements, but he did not speak. When he didn't get a reply, Lauren tried to open the book, but the whole book was like a hole and could no longer be opened. Lauren thought about Tom's notebook Horcrux, which seemed to hold conversations through writing. Lauren took a quill, dipped it in ink, and wrote "hello" under the picture. The ink stains disappeared instantly, as if the book had absorbed the ink. Nico in the portrait spread his hands as if to show something, and then, 4 ring-shaped imprints appeared under the portrait. The rings are about the same size as a copper nut, arranged in a row. In the first ring is an open book, in the second ring are 2 crossed wands, and in the third is a boiling pot. Crucible, the fourth is a scale for weighing. Lauren guessed that the book may represent theoretical knowledge, the crossed wands may represent knowledge about magic spells, the boiling crucible represents potions, and the last scale represents alchemy, alluding to the principle of equivalent exchange in alchemy. This strong sense of déjà vu is like the mobile app in the previous life. It won't be touch sensitive, right? Lauren thought so and did so. He pointed his finger at the first icon, the open book. Nico's silver eyes shone brightly in the portrait, and Lauren's gaze was drawn towards it. When their eyes met, Lauren felt dizzy. Then Lauren felt a pulling force on his nose, as if someone was inserting fingers into his nasal cavity and dragging him forward. When Lauren reacted, he came to a library. There were bookshelves everywhere, and the bookshelves were filled with books. They were wide, brightly lit, and had white marble under their feet. "Welcome to the world of Nico Flamel's Book of Fantasy." A voice came from behind Lauren. Lauren turned around and saw a ghost that looked exactly like Nico in the picture floating in the air. The lower body gradually blurred, and by the time it reached the feet it was no longer visible, like a holographic projection of the previous life. The avatar's voice is a bit shrill and sounds distorted. "Did magic put the library into this book?" Lauren's eyes sparkled with surprise. "Of course not. This contains all the books that Nico has read over the past few hundred years. In reality, many of the books can no longer be found. Memory magic has shaped this library, which is somewhat similar to a pensieve, but more physical and can be browsed at will. The book also has an alchemy laboratory, a potion house, and a duel room. They are all virtual spaces created by memory magic combined with alchemy. You are just a conscious body now. When you enter the world of the book, your real body will fall asleep. When you wake up, everything that happened here will become a wisp of memory and return to your mind." Virtual Nico briefly introduced this fantasy book. Lauren was dumbfounded when he heard this. What kind of super-era thinking, virtual space, real simulation, if there was another networking function, Nico would really create a metaverse. Lauren then asked the question he was concerned about, what about the speed of time? Is the time here consistent with the real time? Virtual Nico smiled, "You have a keen mind, but everything here is just your imagination, or this is your dream. Time and space do not exist here. After reading a book and waking up, a second may have passed in reality, or a whole night may have passed, depending on your state. Then can I bring others in?" Lauren thought this question was also critical. "Lauren, this is your dream. Nico just put things in and didn't make rules. Everything depends on you." Virtual Nico's voice became dazed, and he did not deny the possibility, "It's just that I'm only responsible for teaching, I can't tell you what to do." Lauren hated things without instructions, so he started wandering around the library. There should be fewer books here than in the school library, but there are many books that are not in the Hogwarts library. The key is that some books in the restricted book area can be browsed here at will. I really don't lack books. The books in the school library were enough to study for a long time, and the various manuscripts in the room of requirement, plus here, Lauren felt a deep despair. After wandering around for a while, he didn't plan to stay any longer. I want to see other rooms. Of course. Virtual Nico spread his hands. Lauren heard the sound of gears turning, and then the whole world switched like a slide, and the bright library turned into a classroom. Like ordinary classrooms at Hogwarts, it has a high ceiling and grey stone walls, but the classroom is empty without any tables, chairs, or benches. Virtual Nico floated in midair and introduced to Lauren, "This is the duel room, a place to improve your actual combat ability. Nico feels that combat is a crucial ability for an alchemist. How to practice? Will you be able to spawn monsters for me?" Lauren looked around. This was a closed space, and he could see all the way at a glance. The virtual Nico floating in the air became more blurry, with red, yellow, blue, and green lights flowing on him, and then turned into people familiar to Lauren, Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape. "Based on your impression and Nico's information, I can transform into anyone to duel with you, and I can also." At this point, Professor McGonagall, Professor Quirrell, and Professor Snape stepped out of the halo one after another, floating around Lauren with expressionless faces. To be honest, having 4 professors floating around you with expressionless faces was very stressful, and Lauren felt a little awkward. It can also simulate a multiplayer battlefield. Virtual Nico seemed very proud. "A group fight, right?" Lauren exposed it immediately. Afterwards, Virtual Nico took Lauren to visit the potion room and alchemy laboratory. These 2 places can simulate the preparation of potions and conduct alchemy experiments. The experimental materials are all simulated based on Nico's memory and have corresponding nature and function. But the things Lauren refined were only in his memory and did not really exist. "Then, what should I call you?" Lauren finished exploring and was about to exit the fantasy book, then turned to look at the figure floating in the air. The avatar smiles. "Call me Flamel." Chapter 32. After exiting the world of the book, Lauren found himself lying on his side on the carpet, with an introduction to pictograms quietly at hand. He turned over and lay down, slumped next to the window. The golden sunlight fell on his face, making it ticklish and warm, and very comfortable. Stretch your arms and legs widely and try your best to let every place get the sun. Close your eyes and start sorting out your thoughts. Today's events came without any warning. He had previously known that the complete interpretation of hieroglyphs and the Book of Abraham were of great significance, but that was all. Even if he knew that the content related to the magic stone in the book was true, Lauren didn't care too much. Let alone whether he could not understand it, he was not too eager to turn stones into gold or live forever. After completing his magic studies, he planned to return to the Muggle world. Combining the time traveler's knowledge with magic, it would not be difficult to earn enough money to enjoy life. It might even be easier than turning stone into gold. As for immortality, Lauren had no idea. Dumbledore could live for more than 100 years on his own, and in the end he committed suicide. Who knows how long a wizard can live, and immortality may not have that many benefits. Voldemort attempted to use the Philosopher's Stone to restore his body. If he could create a body out of thin air, it should be possible to use it to treat Grandpa Bates. To sum it up, after Harry defeated Voldemort for the first time, Dumbledore planned to destroy the Sorcerer's Stone in order to prevent it from being used by evil people. It would not be a bad use to borrow it from him at that time. Judging from what happened to Lupin, Dumbledore had no prejudice against kind-hearted werewolves, but instead took care of him. Just confess to him directly and use him to buy some Wolfsbane potion from Snape, so that Grandpa Bates can survive until the end of this school year. Wait a minute, Grandpa Bates. Lauren remembered something she had always forgotten, forgetting to write a letter to Grandpa Bates. It's been almost half a month since school started, and he hasn't written a letter to Grandpa Bates yet. He's afraid he'll get a beating if he goes back for the holidays. Lauren was about to fall asleep while basking in the sun and thinking about things, but now he woke up with a start, got up, took out a pen and paper, and wrote a greeting letter eloquently. The letter first briefly introduced his daily life and stated that everything was fine. Then he cared about Grandpa Bates' health and advised him to accept his old age and buy a yard in a big city to make his life more convenient. Just lock yourself up on a full moon night, the same goes for werewolves in the magical world. The wording and tone in the letter were extremely impolite. If Lauren had been next to Bates when he read the letter, Bates would have smashed Lauren's ass with a wooden stick without hesitation. It's a pity that Lauren will not be there then. The next step was to find the postman. Lauren left the castle and walked around asking questions, and found the Olori not far from the Forbidden Forest. Hundreds of owls live here, and there are feathers everywhere, but they are not noisy. It is almost noon, and most of the owls are sleeping, but there is an unexpected harmony. The shed didn't have the strange smell Lauren imagined, and the house elves had kept it tidy. Finally, Lauren found his little spectacled owl with the help of a house elf. I have gained a lot of weight in the past few days, but I still look innocent, sitting in a small wooden house, pecking my head one after another. Maybe it was awakened by the footsteps. When the little spectacled owl saw Lauren, its eyes were filled with surprise, and it clumsily flew towards him, stepped on his shoulders, and kept hitting his head with its beak complainingly. Lauren was not annoyed. He held the little Hanon in his hand, carefully put on a suit, comforted him, and finally handed the letter to him. After the elf helped the owl make a series of preparations, little Hanon began his first mission. Lauren returned to the castle just in time for lunch. He carefully destroyed the last piece of ribs on the plate, and when he raised his head, he noticed that only Ron was working on a chicken leg on the dining table, and Harry was not around. It's strange that the two people who are usually inseparable didn't even eat together today. Hey! Ron, where's your twin brother? Lauren smiled. Ron stuffed the chicken legs in his mouth, gave Lauren a big white look, swallowed the meat in his mouth, and then slowly said to Lauren, "Don't mention it, he's been in front of that mirror all morning, giggling. Let me bring you lunch." Hermione and Neville both tried to persuade him, but he couldn't listen to either of them. In this situation, Dumbledore should take action, give Harry a bowl of chicken soup for the soul, and finally take back the Mirror of East. It happened that Lauren was also looking for Dumbledore, and when he looked at the guest seat, the principal was not there. He even stopped eating snacks. Lauren needs to criticize this person. Goodbye, Ron. Remember to bring Harry something to drink. Lauren quickly ran out of the cafeteria and ran towards the principal's office. But this time he missed it. In front of the monster statue, Lauren met Professor McGonagall. She said, "The Ministry of Magic has some things that Dumbledore needs to deal with. He will not be back until Wednesday. Wednesday should be about dealing with the public trial." Not being able to see Dumbledore, Lauren planned to turn around and see Harry first, and met Wood on the way. In the abandoned classroom, not only Ron and Harry were there, but Neville was also there, and he also brought some food to Harry. Harry was almost done eating when Lauren came in. Ron and Neville were earnestly advising Harry that it was wrong to stay in front of this mirror all day long, but they couldn't make any sense, and in the end they had no choice but to deal with the messed up Harry. "Harry, Wood is going crazy looking for you." Lauren's words made Harry exclaim, "Oh no, the team has to train today, and he wants to teach me some basic Quidditch rules." Wood is the captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Professor McGonagall has already asked the two to meet. Wood also admires Harry and suggested to Professor McGonagall that he buy Harry a better broom. Although Harry's broom has not yet arrived, Harry made an appointment with Wood to attend training on the court on Sunday. Wood was going to introduce Harry to the rest of the team and educate him on the real Quidditch rules. "Wood is waiting for you on the court." Harry couldn't sit still now. Although he wanted to be with his relatives, he obviously couldn't pigeon Wood at the moment, otherwise Professor McGonagall might turn him into a quaffle and use it to train Wood. Chapter 33. Lauren spent some time reading the list of books Snape had given him. "Maybe I don't need to brush up on Snape's favorability anymore, but I've read so many of them that I always feel like I'm at a loss if I don't finish them. The theory of potions is a hodgepodge that involves extracting a single ingredient from a certain material, just like Muggle chemistry, where some herbs are believed to have a special ingredient that works. Taking the juice of beans, soaking some plant stems with alcohol, and distilling the active ingredients in certain liquids are similar to the chemistry that Lauren learned before. Some things are also used for symbolic purposes, such as the difference between day and night, the difference between the full moon and the waning moon, and the difference between dew illuminated by the sun and dew illuminated by the moon. When stirring a boiling pot, if you say to stir it clockwise, you can only stir it clockwise. If you stir it up and down or left and right, it may cause an explosion. Magic obeys some objective laws and breaks some objective laws. Lauren didn't want to explore it, as the answer might not be found for the rest of his life. In the evening, Harry, Ron, and Neville returned to the dormitory together. They looked very happy. Lauren smiled like a narrow ghost. "Harry, how was the afternoon training? Did Wood ask you to play the quaffle?" Harry blushed a little. The pigeon man had indeed been unethical all morning. Fortunately, the other players are very friendly. In fact, Wood was indeed very angry, but Angelina was there to comfort him, and the jokes made by the two brothers, George and Fred, dispersed a lot of Wood's anger. He still had the patience to let Harry start normal training. Harry felt guilty and tried his best to express himself, flying around on his broomstick, disrupting other people's movements. Wood saw Harry's outstanding flying talent, and also saw that Harry really didn't understand Quidditch at all. The way Harry ran around and was scolded by others made Wood angry and funny, and finally guided Harry well. After getting on track, the team's atmosphere was very good, and Wood was even happier. He felt that with Harry as a secret weapon, this year's Quidditch Cup was not impossible. With Ron's encouragement, or rather coaxing, Neville also got on his broom and tried to fly for a while, but his feet were almost touching the ground and his speed was not much faster than Ron walking beside him. Neville stammered about his flying experience on the bed, and the smile on his face never stopped. I flew past Ron. Oh, you don't know the scene at that time. I almost hit him. Already. Everyone had changed into pajamas, but Harry was still wearing his coat and did not go to bed. Ron turned his head and noticed this scene, and screamed in disbelief, "You don't want to go on a night tour to look at that mirror? Take me one." Simo, who was already lying down, heard this and sat up from the bed. When he learned that several other people in the dormitory had a night out last night, Simo's first thought was not whether points would be deducted, but that he missed out on a wonderful adventure and lacked bragging rights with Dean. It was such a loss. Simo is very resentful. Why? Why is there a total of 5 people in the dormitory, and 4 of them have gone, and I am the only one sleeping stupidly? No, I have to go anyway tonight. Lauren picked up the pillow at hand and threw it at Seamus. Stop causing trouble. Then he looked at Harry and began to advise, Harry, do you remember what is written on that mirror? The green in Harry's eyes dimmed a little, and he nodded, what I show is not your face, but your desire. There are no parents or relatives in the mirror. These are just illusions, do you understand? But Harry didn't know what to say. He just wanted to see more of his parents. Did you enjoy your Quidditch practice this afternoon? Harry nodded. You could have had such fun all day long, and you should have started training in the morning. Harry seemed to understand a little bit, and the illusory shadow in the magic mirror was killing his time. If you watch it 100 times, your parents will not know that you have given your love to your parents a mirror. Ron and Neville also listened quietly. They knew that Harry shouldn't keep looking at the mirror, but they couldn't explain why. Lauren's words made them understand. Only Seamus, who longed to look in the mirror. And me. And me. You all watched it. I haven't seen it yet. Simo screamed loudly in his heart, but he didn't dare to say, Woo, I am isolated in the dormitory. He hated himself. Why did he go to bed so early last night? Couldn't he sleep less on the weekend? Harry over there was still silent, he was still a little reluctant to let go. Seeing this, Lauren had no choice but to pull out his trump card. Tomorrow morning is Transfiguration class. Have you done the homework assigned by Professor McGonagall? The damage of the ultimate move was so high that Ron, who was watching the show next to him, was also knocked out instantly. Harry and Ron skillfully showed the same frightened expression. Help! Seamus and Neville always felt that this scene was a bit familiar. They must have been like this last week. Lauren took out Nico's book of fantasy from under the quilt, gently pressed his finger on the first pattern, and entered the library. The bookshelves are neatly arranged, the lights are bright, and the tables and chairs are tidy. Good evening. Flamel. Lauren greeted the figure floating in the air. Good evening, Lauren. Today we will learn Hebrew first. Flamel smiled gently. The Book of Abraham is written in more than one language, but Hebrew is the main text. Nico did not intend to teach the translated version to Lauren. The original content may be distorted after translation, and different people may have different understandings of the same content. Nico thinks that Lauren can't follow his old path, and the two of them will not experience the same life. In the same turbulent era, if he went by his translation, Lauren might not even be able to practice the incomplete magic stone. In addition to Hebrew, there are also Latin characters, as well as various magic lines that exist in the alchemical field and can communicate and transmit magic. Lauren also saw some ancient Chinese characters in a pile of books. According to Flamel, Lauren won't be able to use the back room for some time. In the dual room, the first year Lauren only has the power of open door, and the others only have some basic spells, and basically have no fighting power. We can't let Flamel turn into a primary school student and duel like him. After reading the book list that Snape gave Lauren, he believed that the potions professor at Hogwarts was worthy of being a potions master. These books could indeed play an important role in sorting out theoretical knowledge. At this stage, it is enough for Lauren to follow this teacher's teachings. As for alchemy, if you are fast, you should be able to get started before Christmas and start to get in touch with some simple alchemy knowledge. Lauren spent the whole night reciting weird syllables and identifying all kinds of strange words. Outside the book of fantasy, Harry and Ron were also referring to the transfiguration homework of Lauren, Neville and Seamus. Chapter 34. On Wednesday, the first years of Gryffindor had 2 classes this morning, herbology and charms. Herbal medicine is considered a labor class. After one morning, the first-year students are all wilted and they don't have enough energy to eat. Hermione, during class, can you please stop forcing us to cast spells your way? Ron kept poking at the steak in front of him with his fork. After the night outing, the relationship between the two of them got better. Everyone got along with each other in a much more relaxed manner, and they could talk about many things directly. Hermione next to her shook her hair and turned to look at Ron, but, you have to admit, my method is effective. Can't Lauren cast a spell without following your method? Ron said confidently. Next to him, Lauren was trying. He stuffed a croissant the size of an adult's fist into his mouth. Hearing this, he turned to Ron and yelled, "Woo, woo, woo." Ron looked confused, what is he talking about? Alas! Hermione sighed, with a face that she couldn't bear to look at. This person really was hopeless. He said that he practiced this way at the beginning, and later he became familiar with how to cast spells. Lauren nodded in agreement, bah! He couldn't hold his saliva back. Hermione couldn't bear it any longer, so she slapped him on the back of the head and knocked out the bread, eat well. Ron couldn't stand it anymore, so he turned to Harry, Harry, do you have training this afternoon? Alas! Harry also sighed, life was hard, do you want to come and watch? No. Ron shook his head, I'm not a Quidditch player. I can finish my homework in this time, and I don't have to catch up with you on weekend nights. These words were a bit heartbreaking, and Harry felt that the buckwheat bread in his mouth became bitter. Quidditch practices 3 times a week, which takes up a lot of spare time, and his homework piles up until the weekend. Why can't Quidditch players do less homework? Harry thought this was unfair. Lauren had already wiped out all the bread at this time. What wonderful things are you thinking about, such as being able to play and not doing homework? You don't even dream about it. Someone has to study in his dream, it's so painful. At this time, the skylight in the restaurant suddenly opened and many owls flew in. Hedwig threw a broomstick in front of Harry with great effort, and stood beside him angrily, pecking hard at the fruit in front of Harry. A broomstick? Hermione stared at this thing. Fortunately, it was clean and tidy, and the shape was gorgeous enough. Otherwise, if a real broom appeared on the dining table, the meal would be unbearable. Professor McGonagall should have bought it for me, but why so fast? I thought it would arrive after Halloween. Harry was a little confused, the delivery speed was too fast. This is not an ordinary broomstick. Ron ignored Harry's doubts and stretched out his hand to gently stroke the smooth broomstick. Harry. This is the Nimbus 2000, the fastest broomstick at the moment. I regretted it, Harry. I'm going to see you train in the afternoon. Please lend me the Nimbus 2000 and ride it for half an hour. 10 minutes is fine. 3 minutes is fine. Several people just looked at Ron being embarrassed. He was going crazy as if he saw the girl he liked, talking to himself the whole time. Lauren couldn't wait to record this scene, so that she could laugh at him from graduation, and laugh for the rest of her life. Harry looked at the guest seat, trying to express his gratitude to Professor McGonagall, but Professor McGonagall was not at the guest seat. Harry remembered that he had not seen Dumbledore for several days. Let's express our gratitude to Professor McGonagall when we get the chance, Harry thought. Calculating the time, Peter Pettigrew's trial should have ended, Dumbledore should have returned, and Lauren planned to try his luck in the principal's office. Arriving in front of the stone statue on the 3rd floor, Lauren began to try. Lemon sherbets. No response. Licorice wand. No response. Pile of cockroaches. The monster statue jumped aside, and the wall behind it split in half, revealing a spiral staircase. That's it. Lauren smiled proudly, the principal's office? No difficulty. As the spiral staircase came to the door, Lauren pushed the door open and entered. Dumbledore had already noticed Lauren and was not surprised. I knew you were coming, Lauren. Dumbledore took out the candy from the bag on the table as if entertaining an old friend. He bought it last week and hurriedly went to deal with some things. There was time to eat. Professor McGonagall told me that you came to see me after I left. Dumbledore opened a box of hazelnut chocolates and handed it to Lauren. Lauren picked one up, peeled off the wrapping paper, and put it into his mouth. The nutty aroma of hazelnuts mixed with the sweet aroma of chocolate seemed to flow into his heart along with the shredded coconut. It was worthy of Dumbledore's certification. Lauren chewed and said, I have something to ask the principal to help me with. Lauren began to tell the story of Grandpa Bates, saying that he wanted to buy Wolfsbane potion and borrow the magic stone to help Grandpa Bates cure his illness. Mr. Bates is a great man who can stick to his responsibilities for decades, but it is still not his responsibility. Dumbledore was also a little moved. Besides, I'm glad you told me about it. Although it was only after the trial of Peter Pettigrew. Dumbledore looked at the child in front of him. He cared about his relatives and dared to practice. He already showed some flaws, but he believed that he was a good child. After thinking for a while, Dumbledore said, I can talk to Snape about the Wolfsbane potion, but in the end you have to convince Professor Snape yourself. As for the Philosopher's Stone, I don't know if it can cure werewolves. If it can, this will be something that benefits the magic world. I'll write and ask about Nico. Lauren was a little disappointed, but he still wanted to improve Snape's favorability. Fortunately, he kept reading. But if Dumbledore mentioned it, it was unlikely that Snape would refuse. Okay. Lauren started talking about another thing. Harry is a little obsessed with the Mirror of East. He misses his parents so much. Has it affected your normal life? Dumbledore's tone was not very urgent. Fortunately, Quidditch training was delayed for half a day. After we persuaded him, we only visit occasionally at night, but the frequency is a bit frequent. I think this problem will get better after he gets to know his real relatives. Dumbledore relaxed and expected much better. Sure enough, friendship is a good medicine for growth and healing trauma. The child who was born into a pure-blood family 20 years ago was supposed to be a Slytherin, but eventually became a Gryffindor child. He can risk his life for his friends. With him by his side, Harry should be able to grow up healthier. Dumbledore cracked the chocolate, and Lauren had already eaten most of the box. The two began to secretly compete to see who could eat the last chocolate. Even though he didn't say it out loud, Lauren believed that Dumbledore had such a tacit understanding with him. On the other side, Harry saw the man standing next to Professor McGonagall on the Quidditch pitch, wearing a black coat, with a thin face and bright eyes, serious. Chapter 35. Evening, Gryffindor Common Room. Harry sat next to the candlestick, looked at the candlestick, and laughed from time to time. He looked so stupid that no one wanted to sit with him. Lauren was playing wizard chess with Ron using Seamus chess pieces. He glanced at Harry and said, How long has he been like this? Ron sighed and said in a helpless tone, It's been like this since he said goodbye to his godfather. I have a godfather, he. Harry muttered stupidly. He would say this from time to time, and the two of them were used to it. He didn't even participate in the afternoon training, but would, and the others are also very happy. The team will have 2 Nimbus 2000. Ron pushed his castle chess piece forward and added, The broomstick Professor McGonagall bought is still on the way, and the Nimbus 2000 he received today was a gift from his godfather. He paid extra, so it was rushed. At this point, Ron suddenly sighed with envy. Sirius is the heir to a pure-blood family. Lauren smiled and said, Aren't you also from a pure-blood family? Ron felt that this man was mocking, so he did not continue the topic, pushed the knight forward, and said viciously, General. Lauren wanted his queen to be sent away, but the chess pieces were unwilling to listen to his arrangement. Don't send me there. Didn't you see the knight next to you? Let him send it away. It doesn't matter if he sacrifices. Then the 2 chess pieces started to fight. Scenes like this were not uncommon. Lauren's chess skills were too poor and the chess set was not his, so there would always be quarrels. Lauren no longer paid attention to the chessboard and looked at Harry. Now that I have a godfather, I don't have to worry about him giggling in the mirror all day long. Ron sighed, This isn't much better. Harry suddenly stood up and said excitedly, I have to tell my parents. And then walked out of the lounge. Lauren and Ron were suddenly worried. It will get better after a while, right? Lauren wasn't too sure. It better be this way. Watching Harry go out, Lauren also remembered that tomorrow is September 19th, and he still has something to do. I have something to go out for. After saying that, he ran out. Go all the way to Hufflepuff's basement and go down the stairs. Even though the banquet time had passed, the stone underground corridor was still brightly lit. Lauren walked to a painting of a bowl of fruit, stretched out his hand and gently scratched a pear in the painting. The pear showed a simple face, giggled, and then turned into a pear. Green door handle. Opening the door, there is a huge kitchen here. It is now clean and all kinds of plates and pots are neatly placed. Lauren didn't see anyone, so he continued walking forward. The fire in the fireplace was still strong, and from time to time there was the crackling sound of wood exploding. Dear little wizard, do you need any help? A high-pitched, somewhat harsh voice sounded from behind Lauren. Even shorter than Lauren, only a little over 2 feet tall, with slender arms and legs connected to a thin torso, but a big head with a pair of bat-like ears. No wonder Hermione wants to establish the House Elf Rights Promotion Association. This is so miserable. But the elf had no such consciousness. He stared straight at Lauren, hoping to get some answer from him. Lauren calmed down. I want to order a cake for tomorrow, avalanche strawberry cake. The elf shouted in surprise, avalanche strawberry cake. Of course it's no problem. We'll make it right away and deliver it to you when it's done. Before Lauren could answer, the elf shouted to everyone around him in a high-pitched voice, did you hear that? Avalanche strawberry cake. A dozen elves came out of the surrounding area. This scene was too weird. Lauren quickly stopped him and said, not now, tomorrow. I'll pick it up after dinner tomorrow. After saying that, Lauren hurriedly escaped. Lauren didn't want to stay in this scene for a second. In the corridor, Lauren remembered that he had not asked the elf's name, nor had he told him his own name. But he wasn't too worried. If he came to the kitchen and asked, he would definitely find it. When they returned to the lounge, Ron and Seamus were playing chess. Although the chess pieces obeyed Seamus' command, they were still suppressed and beaten by Ron, and were eaten away bit by bit. Harry had returned, still looking at the candlestick, looking lost. Lauren walked over and sat down, with his mouth pointed at Holly Nunu, asking the two of them, what's going on? General. Ron moved the chess piece, we don't know, he just came back not long ago. At the end of the game, Ron and Seamus began to pack up the chess pieces and rearrange the board. Lauren walked up to Harry and waved his hand back and forth in front of his eyes, hey! Professor Snape is calling you. Harry trembled visibly, and then realized that he was in the Gryffindor common room, and looked at Lauren complainingly. What's going on here? Harry sighed, in front of the magic mirror, I saw Principal Dumbledore. Then what? Lauren thought Dumbledore was going to let it go, but in the end he came over to make chicken soup himself. Then Dumbledore said he wanted to put the magic mirror away. Harry felt it was a pity. Lauren knew that in addition to worrying about Harry's mental health, Dumbledore also wanted to use the Mirror of Eris to create the final level of the Philosopher's Stone copy. Lauren changed the subject, did your godfather tell you what happened to your parents back then? Harry shrugged his shoulders, he told me, but I don't know how to deal with it. I am angry and hateful for Peter Pettigrew's betrayal, but he is already in Azkaban. This is all Voldemort's fault, and Voldemort is dead. I miss my parents and I'm glad I have a godfather who cares about me. Harry slowly revealed these words. He had just said them to Dumbledore, and now he said them again. He said them to Lauren and himself. Lauren didn't say anything else. Harry kept thinking about his parents. In the original work, Sirius didn't stay with him for long. Harry was lost as he grew up. People saw that he was a hero, but they didn't see that he was just a child. Don't think too much, it's better to look forward to it. You won't have to go back to Dursley's house during the holidays. Harry's expression lit up when he heard this. In the library of the Book of Fantasy. Flamel, I want to ask you something about the Philosopher's Stone. Lauren did not start today's study immediately. Of course, this is my duty. Flamel floated over. Can the Sorcerer's Stone cure werewolves? Dumbledore wanted to write to Nico, but there was Nico here, why not be more direct? The answer is, not sure. Flamel began to tell Lauren the reason. The Philosopher's Stone, also known as the Philosopher's Stone, contains powerful magic. If you can make full use of this magic power, you can achieve all kinds of magic. There are also legends in the Muggle world that the magic stone can grant wishes, and these are not unfounded. But no one can fully control this power. Most of the time, the effectiveness of the magic stone depends on the refiner's thoughts. The mainstream belief is that the magic stone can turn stone into gold and refine the elixir of life. Nico was also influenced by this concept, so his magic stone has these two functions. After a long period of exploration, Nico realized that his original mistake was irreversible. Let Lauren take less detours, this is exactly the meaning of Flamel's existence. As for Lauren's confusion, Voldemort used the Philosopher's Stone to restore his body. Flamel believed that Voldemort also had difficulty controlling the powerful magic of the Philosopher's Stone. He only regarded the Philosopher's Stone as a powerful source of magic, and used the magic of the Philosopher's Stone to reshape his body with magical rituals. As long as it's a powerful source of magic power, it doesn't matter whether it's a magic stone or not. However, in the modern magic world, there is no source of magic power more powerful than the magic stone. If Lauren can find the magic to reverse the werewolf, using the magic stone as the source of magic is also feasible. But according to Flamel, Nico had not heard of such magic for at least hundreds of years. Lauren was a little disappointed and asked if there was any other way. Flamel gave the answer: you can first obtain the identity of a Philosopher's Stone refiner and use Nico's Philosopher's Stone with faith, and you may be able to achieve your goal. How to get it? Salvation of a Desperate Soul. Chapter 36. In the defense against the dark arts class, Professor Quirrell's stench surrounded the classroom. Lauren, Hermione, Harry, and Ron were sitting in the last row. Why are you sitting here? I can't even hear what the professor is saying. Hermione tried hard to prick up her ears, wanting to know the scope of the monster curse. To protect your nose. Lauren held his head with one hand and tried to spin the quill with the other hand. However, the weight of the quill was too uneven and it would fall on the textbook after 1 or 2 turns. Harry and Ron's eyes were unconsciously attracted by the rotating pen, and they became dizzy. Harry cheered up, those who come early can sit in the back. Seamus came late today, so only the first row is left. Several people looked towards Simo at the front. Seamus's position was right next to the podium. Every time Quirrell waved his sleeves, there would be a smell of fermented garlic blowing towards him along the wind. Seamus turned pale and kept lowering his head and covering his nose. Lauren noticed Seamus' shoulders that had been shaking and felt that he was about to faint. By chance, Quirrell waved his sleeves again, and Hermione clearly saw Seamus' throat moving up and down, as if he was about to vomit. Hermione was frightened when she saw Seamus like that, and finally chose smell over knowledge and smell. Please help me take the seat at the back next time. Unable to hear from behind, Hermione no longer cared about the content of the class. Several people have been paying attention to the suffering Seamus. Poor Seamus finally persisted until the end of get out of class with the silent support of a group of people. His legs were shaking when he stood up, but it was Dean who helped Seamus to the restaurant. Looking at the 2 people walking out of the classroom, Ron said sympathetically, I bet that Seamus will come an hour early for the next defense against the dark arts class. Several people around him nodded together. It wasn't until the afternoon flying lesson that Seamus became happier. After giving some flying knowledge, Mrs. Huoki's face became serious. Something bad happened in the flying class last week. I hope everyone can learn from it. If someone makes trouble again this time, I will definitely let Dumbledore know. The principal will fire you. Then came the free flight time. There was no final exam in the flying class. After everyone cheered, we started to have fun without any pressure. Neville was riding his broom on the grass and flying happily. No one else was at the same height as he was, and his feet almost touched the taller grass on the ground. Lauren can already take off and land skillfully, but he can't do anything else. He can only move slowly at a height and in one direction at a speed similar to trotting. Although Ron was not as agile as Harry, he was still pretty good. The 2 of them were going back and forth in the air, playing and laughing happily. Lauren! Are you playing the role of a snail in the sky? Ron passed Lauren once again, taunting him in a 360 spiral up and down, left and right, back and forth. Lauren is not annoyed either. He has already accepted his setting as a novice broom driver. Flying is not about going fast. If the flight is not standardized, your loved ones will burst into tears. After that, he murmured to himself some strange things about drinking in a car but not driving, and driving a drink but not driving in a car. Ron didn't understand and flew away from Harry. Hermione's situation is a little better than Lauren's. The little witch has no talent in flying, but she likes to feel like a real witch. Hermione flew from behind Lauren and slowed down to the same speed as Lauren. Flying is not an important subject. It doesn't matter if you are not good at it. There was a blush on the little witch's face caused by exercise, and the sunlight reflected in her eyes, making them bright. Do you like flying? Well, I think it's like what I imagined a wizard to be. So do you like Quidditch? I don't like it very much, I can't understand it, and it feels a bit barbaric. The two broomsticks were neither too close nor too far apart, and they flew forward slowly at the same speed. They chatted every now and then. Lauren felt that the sun, the wind, and the smell of grass were just right for such a scene. Actually, when I first found out that I didn't have flying talent, I felt sad. I couldn't get full marks in this class, and I couldn't be like Professor McGonagall. But, seeing you and Neville, I feel that I can also enjoy a little bit of flying. The little witch squinted her eyes and felt the wind blowing over her. Lauren looked sideways. Hermione's hair kept floating in the wind. You don't sound like you are complimenting me. Hermione opened her eyes. The two looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. Evening, Gryffindor common room. Seamus leaned in front of Ron and Harry with a sad face. Smell it, do you still smell of garlic on me? Seamus was attacked by evil black magic in the Defense Against the Dark Arts class. He was sluggish during lunch. After taking flying lessons in the afternoon, he hurried back to take a shower. He took a shower for several hours and Neville brought dinner. Harry took a small sniff, but could still smell the smell of garlic, and quickly moved away. I think there is more. Simo, who had been tortured all day, almost cried. I have washed it 3 times. Hermione looked up from a Ravenclaw classmate's Defense Against the Dark Arts notes. Why don't you try clean up? Ron nodded in agreement and said loudly, yes, my mother always uses this spell too. Clean up is the best cleaning spell. It is welcomed by many housewives, but they have not yet learned this spell in the 1st grade. Simo thought this was a good idea, and planned to ask the seniors in the senior class to help him. He was a little hesitant about who to go to, but several people around him gave suggestions. At this time, Lauren returned to the lounge from outside. He touched next to Hermione, leaned into her ear and said, Hermione, come with me. Hermione didn't know what was going on, but she nodded and followed Lauren out of the lounge. No one paid attention, but Ron was still loudly advising Seamus, don't go to George and Fred, they will add the smell of shit to you. Lauren took Hermione to the 8th floor, in front of the painting of a giant monster beating silly Barnabas. The corridor was dark, and Hermione's voice lowered unconsciously as she whispered, Lauren, why did you bring me here? Lauren didn't answer. Hermione watched him walking back and forth in front of the painting. She tugged on Lauren's sleeve and moved closer. What are you doing? There's a curfew soon. Let's go back quickly. Okay. Lauren also lowered his voice and looked up at the wall in front of him. Hermione then noticed that a black door had appeared on the wall. Is this some new secret passage? It leads to. Before Hermione could finish her question, Lauren opened the door and pulled her in. Here. Hermione opened her mouth in surprise. The sofa, TV, and paintings on the walls were the same as at home. There is also an avalanche strawberry cake with candles placed on the coffee table. Hermione's eyes suddenly turned red. No one in the school knew her birthday. Her parents who used to accompany her were not here. She didn't even think about her birthday this year. She was a little disappointed when she got up this morning, but her friends helped her get a good seat, and she took the flying lesson slowly, so she was very happy after the whole day. I didn't expect anyone to remember her birthday and prepare such a scene. It was the first time for an 11-year-old child to leave home for such a long time. Hermione suddenly thought of her parents and tears fell like beads. She stepped forward and hugged Lauren, mumbling, thank you, thank you. The fresh breath of the girl penetrated his nose. Lauren was a little at a loss. Feeling the trembling girl in his arms, he comforted him, blow out the candles first. Hermione then raised her head and opened her eyes wide, trying to take in all the scenes in front of her. After a while, Hermione looked at the room in surprise while eating strawberry cake, so it can reflect the scene in our hearts according to our needs. No one will not be moved by the magic of the Room of Requirement. It represents people's most essential longing for magic. Responds to all requests. There are limitations. You can't change food. Some things are just appearances, just like the TV can't be turned on. There is also a hidden room here. There are many precious manuscripts in it. I will take you to see them later. The two visited the room where the items were hidden, and Lauren showed her Miranda Gorshak's manuscript. Her family environment doesn't look very good. She must be a strong witch, Hermione said. Hermione was very curious about everything here. She had some guesses about the room of requirement, and the two of them chatted until late. When I went back, the moonlight shone through the window on the corridor, like white flowers all over the ground. Everyone! If you're watching, give it a shout. It's so painful to play single player. Woohoo! Please be sure to humiliate me loudly if the writing is not good. Chapter 37. In Potions class. Snape's calm tone was a bit hypnotic after listening too much, but no student dared to sleep in Professor Snape's class. Today's teaching content was about the properties and applications of bezoars. Hermione buried her head and wrote densely in her notebook, trying to put all the knowledge points in her notebook. Lauren had basically mastered this part of the content. Within 5 minutes of the class starting, Lauren's mind was no longer in the class. He recalled the conversation with Flamel last night. What is it about redeeming desperate souls? Lauren gritted his teeth as he looked at the figure floating in the air. The Riddler is the most annoying thing. Previously, Nico ran away after finishing his riddle, but now Flamel can't escape. Flamel spread his hands and looked helpless. I'm sorry Lauren, Nico didn't give me this memory, you have to explore on your own. Back in Potions class, Lauren muttered to himself. It should be someone who saves the desperate souls. Who can be saved? The person who died in the battle with the Death Eaters later? It shouldn't be that simple. Ollivander? Snape? None of them look alike. There was no way he could save Voldemort. With his little arms and legs, when faced with Voldemort, he didn't know who was in despair. Hermione looked at Lauren next to her. He put his hands under the table and stared blankly in front of him. He was not paying attention to the lecture. As a good desk mate, of course, she must persuade her classmates to study hard in time. Just as she was about to speak, she thought of something and felt a little embarrassed. Could it be because of what happened last night? It's all because I was too curious about the wizard's manuscripts and took Lauren to chat too late. The little witch was adding drama to herself, and Snape on the stage also saw Lauren, who was obviously distracted. Snape stopped his lecture and walked up behind Lauren with a straight face. The classroom suddenly fell silent, and all eyes turned to Lauren. Hermione wanted to reach out and slap the distracted desk mate next to her, but Snape stared at her with his eyes like a dead fish. The little witch felt like she had met the eyes of some kind of snake, staring at you with all his might. Emotions, I was so scared that I didn't dare to move. Snape would pull out a Gryffindor student every class to make a fuss and find excuses to deduct points. Neville had been scolded to tears several times. Every time they go to potions, all the Gryffindor little lions feel insecure. Except for Hermione and Lauren, these two people can basically answer all the questions and make potions without making mistakes. Harry and his classmates were sighing on their faces and cheering in their hearts, great. It was Lauren who was unlucky today, he should be safe. Some people are complacent and self-righteous when they happen to accomplish something. Snape was talking about Peter Pettigrew, but the case involved too much, it had been too long, and there were still some procedures that had not been completed, so it was not announced to the public. Only a few people in Lauren's dormitory knew about this matter, and they did not tell anyone about it under Lauren's instructions, threats, in the name of Dumbledore. The students all thought Snape was referring to the fact that Lauren and Hermione behaved perfectly in class and were never caught doing anything wrong. But in Potions class, you must abide by my rules. Snape raised his hand, straightened his sleeves, and hit Lauren hard on the back of his head. Mr. Morgan, answer my question. Lauren, who was in the center of the storm, was slightly shocked by a sudden blow to the back of his head. It wasn't very painful, but the old man didn't panic at all. What should you do if your friend Harry is poisoned and you don't have a prepared antidote at hand? Harry in the front row feels very innocent, thank you, you have to take me with you. I think we should ask the professors for help, Professor Snape. Hermione's vision went dark, and she wanted to grab Lauren's collar and shout, what are you doing? This is Potions class. Lauren was very proud, tisk tisk, perfect answer. If a classmate is poisoned, he must report it to the teacher as soon as possible. If the victim is Harry, reporting Dumbledore as soon as possible is definitely the best choice. Snape's face turned even darker, no professor, you handle it yourself. Hermione felt that Lauren must not be paying attention to the lecture, so she reminded Lauren in what she thought was a very quiet voice, "Bezoars, bezoars." Lauren sighed inwardly, what a silly witch. Put a bezoar in the throat. Bezoars have a good detoxifying effect on some common poisons. But for poisons that are too strong, other materials need to be added to prepare a more powerful antidote. Snape said nothing and returned to the stage. Miss Granger may think she knows everything, but this cannot be the reason for you to disrupt the class. 5 points from Gryffindor for Miss Know-It-All. None of the Gryffindor little lions cared about this deduction. Professor Snape would always find opportunities to deduct points from Gryffindor. They had long been used to it, and Hermione earned many more points than this. Hermione felt a little aggrieved, but she did make a small move. Lauren obviously knew the answer. She was too smart, and in the end she could only blame herself for the mistake. This result obviously didn't make Hermione feel better, and the more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she became. By the time get out of class was over, Lauren's voice had a slightly obvious nasal sound. "Lauren Morgan, come see me after dinner." Snape remembered the scene of chatting with Dumbledore and felt a little irritated. Dumbledore was also a Riddler. He chatted with him for a long time, talking about love and family, and only the last important sentence was, "Lauren needs your help. For the sake of me, an old man, help him." If Lauren knew what Snape was thinking, he would definitely agree with it. Older people like this tune. Lauren and the others accompanied Hermione in the corridor, and everyone noticed that Hermione was not in a good mood. Harry couldn't bear it. He had been targeted the most and felt that he had the right to speak. "Hermione, don't take it too seriously. Snape always has reasons to deduct points. It's just that you're unlucky this time." Lauren was actually thinking about how much Dumbledore had told Snape, but there were obviously more important things to do at the moment. "Indeed, you earned enough points for him to deduct several times." Neville said, "I thought it was Lauren's fault this time." Ron was filled with indignation. "If you ask me, Dumbledore should ban that old bat from deducting points from Gryffindor. What a few people think is that points will be deducted, which is normal." The little witch obviously had no intention of joining in with this group of people. She sniffed and said, "I have to add 3 inches to my transfiguration homework. I hope Professor McGonagall can give me some extra points." After saying that, she quickly walked towards the book. The museum is far away. Ron looked at the retreating figure and murmured, "Didn't Professor McGonagall only ask for 3 inches? Lauren smacked his lips, "This is King Juan." Chapter 38. The 3rd grade students have defense against the dark arts class today, and the get out of class has ended. Professor Quirrell walked quickly to the restaurant with his head lowered, and George and Fred followed furtively. When Lauren and the others saw one of the twins, he took out his wand and pointed it at Professor Quirrell's head and shouted, "Fly the scarf." The purple scarf was originally wrapped around Professor Quirrell's head. Under the influence of magic, starting from the exposed end, it suddenly untied from Professor Quirrell's head and flew up. The scarf did not change very quickly. Professor Quirrell quickly reacted. He covered the scarf on his head in panic and looked around to see who was playing the prank. The 2 brothers George and Fred were very familiar with this scene. They immediately surrounded Ron on the left and right, put their hands on Ron's shoulders, and pretended to chat with Ron loudly. "Oh, Ronnie, I heard you wet the bed again last night. The last time you wet the bed was last week." The surrounding eyes suddenly focused on Ron, and most of them expressed surprise. Anyone who was familiar with the twins knew that this was another prank and sympathized with Ron. Ron's face suddenly turned red. "I will definitely not spare you this time. Go to hell, George." Ron rushed toward the person on the right, but Ron's brother's hands were much longer than Ron's. He hugged Ron. "Look, our baby Ronnie is angry." He paused and continued, "But, I'm Fred, and that's George over there." George over there smiled and said, "As our younger brother, you can't tell us apart. This makes us sad." Professor Quirrell didn't pay attention to the fight between the 3 red-haired brothers and had already walked away. George and Fred also noticed Quirrell walking away. It seems that the flying curse can't deal with the scarf of a human-shaped turd egg. We have to find another way. Maybe we can sneak attack during class. Bye Ronnie. We're going to get down to business." With one word each, the 2 put Ron down and ran away quickly. Harry couldn't hold it back and burst out laughing. "When will Ronnie wet the bed next?" "Harry, that's enough." Ron smiled. The group went to have lunch happily. The list of books that Professor Snape gave Lauren had 25 books in total. Lauren had already read 4 of them, and he took the time to review them. I thought about what to say to Snape several times, but in the end I didn't come up with the best answer. After dinner, Lauren headed towards Snape's office. Snape's office is located underground, next to the Slytherin lounge. Even the reliefs on the walls near the office are mainly dark green. The dark green is a bit dim, with a faint layer of black. As soon as Lauren arrived outside the office, before knocking on the door, Snape's deep voice came from inside, "Come in." The light in the office was dim, and Snape was correcting the homework that had been received today with his head down. Stan did not greet Lauren, who began to look around the office. There is nothing special about the table, bookshelf, or cabinets, but the shelves along the wall are filled with glass jars. Lauren saw the eyeballs of various unknown creatures, a whole toad as big as a human head, poisonous snakes with strange patterns, floating in liquids of various colors in different shapes. These glass jars give the entire office an eerie feel. I hope you will go back and tell Harry Potter and his little follower Ron Weasley that if their homework is so similar, I will let them copy it 100 times. Snape did not look up. The voice is also very calm. "I know, Professor." Lauren said very well. "From the very beginning of your approach, I knew you had another purpose." "Then, tell me." Snape raised his head, staring at Lauren with a deep pool of eyes. "Mr. Morgan, you are eager to start from what do I get here?" Lauren didn't care whether Snape was using legilimency or not, he looked directly at the potions professor. "Wolfsbane potion, Professor." Snape's eyes became surprised. "A werewolf? You?" "No, my grandfather is a werewolf," Lauren said simply. He didn't think playing tricks with Snape would have any good results. "I need Wolfsbane potion to ease my grandfather's pain." "Oh, werewolf." Snape's eyes were far-reaching, sad, and pitiful. He thought of the other werewolf and the people he hated when he was a student. When Snape was in 6th grade, he accidentally entered the Shrieking Shack on a full moon night and was almost killed by Lupin, but was saved by Harry's father James. After a while, Snape came back to his senses, looked at Lauren deeply, and said nothing. Snape took Lauren to his private storage room, and Lauren discovered that there was actually another room hidden in this office. Snape dragged 2 boxes over and opened the lids. One box was empty, and the other box was densely packed with many venomous snakes with green stripes on black backgrounds. There were probably dozens of them. Lauren's scalp felt numb when he saw them. If you are bitten by a green-striped viper, the wound will never heal. It will continue to fester and fester. Snape said as he stretched out his hand to pull out one from the dense pile of snakes and opened its mouth. "Knock your fangs on the mouth of the test tube." Lauren watched as thick venom was rapidly secreted from the fangs. One squeezed-out venom took up 1/5 of the test tube. Snape put the test tube back into the test tube rack and threw the venom-collected snake into another empty box. The dropped venomous snake was restless and tried to crawl out. Lauren noticed that there was a circle of gold thread at the opening of both boxes. The poisonous snake crawls to the mouth of the box, touches the golden thread, becomes stiff, and then falls back into the box. "I want you to collect this box of poisonous snake venom." Snape's words made Lauren feel cold all over, and he forced himself to answer, I know, Professor." Snape ignored him, walked out of the storage room, and continued to grade his homework. Lauren had never encountered such a scene in his life, and he repeatedly mentally constructed himself, these snakes should not really bite him, and Snape would not put a student in such danger. The poisonousness mentioned before, it should be to scare yourself. After thinking about this, Lauren felt much better and calmed down a little. Lauren took a deep breath and reached out to the snake box. The touch of wet, cold, and slippery scales suddenly took over Lauren's senses. As Lauren suspected, there were no snakes in the box that could bite. He couldn't catch a snake as accurately as Snape, and several snakes crawled up his arms, their scales rubbing Lauren's skin. He quickly pulled his hand out, and there were 2 snakes on his arm. He almost cursed. At this moment, the snake that had been twisting in his hand became quiet. Lauren breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that not only did it touch the golden thread, but as long as it exceeded the height of the golden thread, the snake would become stiff and quiet. Taking the venom and placing it step by step, Lauren repeated these actions mechanically. Until the end, Lauren was able to take the snake with an expressionless face and could concentrate on looking at the snake's patterns. After an unknown amount of time, Lauren walked out of the storage room, his face pale and his eyes dull. "Professor Snape, it's done. Go back." Snape didn't look up. There was a surge of anger in Lauren's heart, but what followed was a deep sense of powerlessness. He was mentally exhausted, and finally left the office without saying anything. Come here every Friday night from now on. You have to drink the Wolfsbane potion a week in advance. It's already late this month. Snape's voice came from behind. Chapter 39. Snape's words gave Lauren something to think about, and what he had been thinking about since before he entered school finally came to an end. Lauren was a little relaxed, but not too happy. The scene just now had a great impact on Lauren. That feeling, that helplessness, and even the anger that arises when you finally feel like you are being played. Every detail is imprinted on Lauren's heart. Snape fulfilled his duties as a professor and did not refuse the matter, but Lauren felt uncomfortable. Back in the lounge, Lauren washed his body carefully 3 times until the cold, slippery feeling completely disappeared before lying down on the bed. The roommate had already fallen asleep. Lauren was lying on the bed with his eyes open. He was looking at the ceiling or looking at something else through the ceiling. He was already very tired mentally, and sleepiness was surging in his mind. In the end, it felt like I was stuck somewhere, very sleepy, but unable to sleep. Closing my eyes, I felt that I was about to enter a dream, and vaguely saw densely packed and coiled snakes in my dream. Lauren felt that a long time had passed, but he was still awake. He seemed to be able to hear unknown birds chirping in the distance through the window. After hesitating for a moment, Lauren pointed his hand towards the fantasy book. A halo of light flashed before Lauren's eyes, and the scene in front of him was replaced by a bright and clear library. Flamel didn't seem to notice Lauren's strangeness. He flew around Lauren twice. Today we are going to learn function words and grammar. Lauren stared at Flamel in trance, trying to see the shadow of the snake in him. The way they twisted around was somewhat similar. Flamel, I don't want to study today. Lauren's voice was not very strong. Flamel looked at Lauren. Oh. Of course. Nico's face began to twist, and his voice became shriller. You don't want to study today. Today is the weekend. There are 4 weekends a month, and there are 50 weekends a year. If you live to be 100 years old, you will still have more than 4,000 weekends. Of course. You will be the refiner of the magic stone, and you will have countless weekends. Lauren didn't notice Flamel's weirdness. He just thought he was advising him to study hard and explained, it's not because of the weekend. Today After a pause, Lauren still recounted today's experience. After I came back, I felt a little tired, so I just came in to relieve myself. Flamel seemed to calm down, floating in the air, and didn't speak for a long time. Lauren didn't say anything else. He rested his head on the table and looked at the elusive, bright lights in the distance. His eyes narrowed and became smaller, as if he was about to fall asleep. Flamel looked at the little man on the table. This was the person chosen by the prophecy. He was only 11 years old, and he didn't know that every gift from fate had its price. Alas! How does fate decide, Albus? Flamel rose into the air, emitting bright, crystal white light. Lauren fell asleep in a daze. It felt like you had a holiday on Friday and stayed up until the early hours of the morning. Then you fell asleep. It was raining sparsely on Saturday, and the sky was grey outside. You seemed to have opened your eyes, glanced out the window, and fell asleep again. When I got up, I felt like I had slept for a century. When I opened my eyes happily, it was another day full of energy. What Lauren saw when he opened his eyes was still the bright library. Flamel was floating on the bookshelf in the distance, flipping through a Muggle drama. Seeing Lauren wake up, Flamel put down the book and floated over. Lauren, do you feel your powerlessness? Lauren had a question mark on his face. What weird things are you talking about? If you had Dumbledore's power, would you still encounter this kind of thing? Flamel looked confused. Which first-year wizard can have the power of Dumbledore? Lauren thought Flamel might need to return it to the factory for repairs. Flamel ignored the flaw proposed by Lauren. You will encounter more things like this in the future. Don't waste your talents. Lauren, you have to learn to fight. Lauren thought about it carefully. There would be a battle with Death Eaters later, so it would be right to improve his actual combat ability. Are we going to start using dual rooms? No, you're not qualified yet. Flamel's decisiveness made Lauren feel a little hurt. You can be more tactful, so what should I do? Lauren, you need to be proficient in magic spells in reality before you can use them in the dual room. Flamel planned to let Lauren grow up quickly. Use your talents to form your own combat power. Why not practice your spells in the dueling chamber? In addition to the wizard's own will, the release of magic spells also requires physical participation. Wizards who are good at dueling will practice the magic spells they are good at like instinct. Lauren's Expelliarmus from Harry immediately appeared in his mind, and he nodded in understanding. Just say so. Your talent allows you to practice spells faster. You need to make a distinction. Find what's best for you, not what's most powerful. Finally, practice the iron armor curse first. Breakfast time. There was bean stew, bread, and salad on the long Gryffindor table. Those who prefer meat will choose bacon and fried sausages. Only Lauren had steak for breakfast, and Ron watched as Lauren chewed the last bite and licked his lips after swallowing. I have to admit, watching Lauren eat is a pleasure. Just looking at him, you seem to be able to feel the meaty aroma of well-done steak mixed with the salty and sweet juices, soaking into the texture of every shred of meat. Look what I'm doing. Lauren picked up the vegetable juice and cleared the taste in his mouth. He wanted to make up for the energy he lost last night. Ron was still watching blankly, his eyes following the movement of Lauren's hand. No, it's nothing, I just feel that eating steak for breakfast is weird. Oh, I highly recommend you try it tomorrow. After speaking, Lauren moved closer to Hermione. Hermione, do you have any plans today? Hermione was a little confused. She stayed up late yesterday working on her transfiguration homework and didn't get enough sleep. Blinking, he looked at Lauren blankly. I've been in the library on weekends. I need your help. Lauren felt that the only one in the first grade who could help him was Hermione. Hermione, who didn't know what was going on, was dragged all the way to the room of requirement by Lauren. Lauren walked back and forth in front of the beaten silly Barnabas, asked the room of requirement to set up a dual room, and pulled Hermione in. For some reasons that I can't tell you yet, I need to improve some practical abilities, at least to reach a certain threshold. Lauren pressed Hermione's shoulders, blue eyes looked into brown eyes. In first grade, he has the most magic spells, so he needs your help. Last night, Flamel made a request that he should at least be proficient in the iron armor curse and learn to be beaten before hitting people. Hermione didn't ask further questions, but just counted on her fingers. The only spell I know that can be used in combat is the binding spell. The little witch was a little depressed. I can't help you, I still know too few spells. After thinking about it, she already knew the most among the freshmen, and then continued, I don't think we need to pursue actual combat at the moment. We only first grade. That's enough. What I want to practice is the iron armor curse. You just have to cast the spell on me. Lauren explained. It sounded like nothing was wrong, and Hermione nodded. Lauren briefly introduced the iron armor curse. The iron armor curse is a spell that can resist various magic spells. An invisible magic barrier will appear in the direction where the caster's wand points, deflecting and dispersing objects or spells to protect the caster. A kind of protective spell for a certain area around the person and its surroundings. The iron armor curse is different from other spells in that you can receive feedback without releasing it. It needs to be improved based on different defensive results, ideally being able to control the direction of deflecting enemy spells, or causing them to dissipate. Going a step further, this invisible magic barrier can be protected throughout the body. Of course, if Lauren can completely release a protective barrier today, it will be considered a success. Hermione suddenly remembered, Miranda Gorshak's advanced charms mentioned that many adult wizards may not be able to cast this spell. Ever since she last read Miranda Gorshak's manuscript, Hermione had become interested in this legendary witch. Hermione borrowed other books by this author from the library, and Mrs. Pants was very helpful, saving her a lot of time. I don't think this is a spell that can be learned by first-year students, Lauren. Hermione dissuaded, and she had some guesses. Have you encountered any difficulties? We can go to the professor and the principal now. Min's tone was urgent. It is obviously not normal for a student to suddenly learn a defensive spell that is out of range. Stop it, stop it. Lauren stopped Hermione's thinking, it's just a spell, nothing else. After some persuasion, Hermione reluctantly accepted Lauren's words. The two were 2 or 3 meters apart, with their wands pointing in each other's direction. Hermione was a little nervous. This was her first time casting a spell on someone. Are you ready? Ready. Hermione confirmed again, are you ready? Lauren was also a little nervous, and he huffed and puffed out, ready. Are you ready? Certainly. Are you ready? Yes. Lauren hesitated. Are you ready? Lauren can't stand it anymore. What's the SpongeBob SquarePants opening song next to you? That's enough, Hermione. Ah! All petrified. Hermione was startled by Lauren's impatient tone. Under the high pressure, the spell was surprisingly smooth. The vinewood wand emits a subtle white light. Lauren was still immersed in the melody of the conversation with the captain. He didn't react at all. He stood up, put his hands close to the seam of his trousers, his face turned blue, and he fell straight to the ground. It was also the first time that Hermione saw the real scene of this spell. She was stunned for a moment, and quickly came to her senses. I told you that you are not ready yet. Her tone was a little aggrieved. Why are you trying to hurt me? We should obviously coordinate more times. If you don't yell at me, I won't be so panicked. The little witch mumbled and complained about Lauren, and it took a while before she thought of undoing the curse on Lauren. Undoing the curse didn't go very smoothly. It took several attempts before Lauren's stiff body relaxed. It's all your fault. Hermione vented and slapped Lauren on the shoulder. Lauren felt aggrieved, but he didn't dare to say it. He still wanted to ask for help, and it was indeed rude of him. After patting the non-existent dust on his body, Lauren pretended to be relaxed. Come again, I will definitely cooperate with you this time. The two resumed their starting positions, wands facing each other. Are you ready? Hermione's voice was no longer nervous. Yes, Captain. Lauren swears in his heart that I will cooperate with you if you tell me 100 times. All petrified this time, Hermione confirmed it once before taking action decisively. Lauren, who was preparing for the next greeting from the captain, watched helplessly as the white light pointed at him, and he screamed in his heart, I don't accept it. Lauren stared and fell straight. Alas! Hermione sighed, you're not ready. Hermione said nothing more, sighing as she lifted the curse on Lauren. Lauren stood up again and patted the non-existent dust. Ahem, it was an accident. It will definitely not happen next time. Hermione shook her head and stood back up. Are you ready? Yes. Tong Tong Petrochemical. Armor Protection. The two spoke out almost at the same time, but the iron armor curse was not a primary spell, and Lauren failed to summon a magic barrier. Again, Lauren fell. Hermione had a premonition that she might be very tired today and would keep casting spells and undoing them. Oh! Lauren stood up again, his tense muscles making him breathe a little faster, and his face felt hot. Neither of them spoke, and stood back to their original positions. Tong Tong Petrochemical. Armor Protection. Lauren felt it the moment he cast the spell. He still failed to summon the magic barrier this time. The shameful emotion quickly drove his brain. Lauren threw himself to the side to avoid the petrification this time. The practice of the two is on the right track. In nearly a morning, Lauren only managed to neutralize Hermione's spell twice. The good news is that Hermione is much more proficient in casting and uncursing spells, but the bad news is that Lauren still cannot cast the iron armor curse stably. Ahem, Hermione, I don't think I can let you keep repeating it like this. It won't help you. Due to some strange pride, Lauren came up with a brilliant idea to knock Hermione down once. What do you think you have in mind? Hermione knew that Lauren had not learned any attack spells yet, and the explosion spells Seamus said were too powerful to be practiced. Let's have a wizard's duel. Lauren said seriously and sanctimoniously. The current record is 21-0. Hermione raised her chin, looking proud. The two bowed, holding their wands in front of their chests, staring intently at each other's movements. All petrified, Hermione took the lead. Lauren had been waiting for this step for a long time, and quickly rolled to the side, half squatting and facing Hermione's right shoe, Wingardim Leviosa. The levitation spell made the shoes want to run around. Hermione's center of gravity was unstable and she staggered to the ground. Before falling, she hurriedly released a binding spell towards Lauren. Hermione had been using this charm all morning and it was feeling hot. They both fell to the ground, shoulders touching, but Lauren was incapacitated. Hermione's smile spread from the exposed teeth to the crescent moons of her eyes, and from every part of her face. Lauren could feel her shoulders shaking with laughter. Hermione patted Lauren on the shoulder and stood up slowly. Mr. Morgan, 22-0, haha. Chapter 40. Lauren chewed the mutton chops loudly in his mouth, keeping his eyes on Hermione. Hermione, who was sitting opposite, had an uncontrollable smile on her face, eating happily and humming some random melodies. Hermione looked at Lauren from time to time and muttered some weird words about 22-0. Lauren comforted himself that he was familiar with the iron armor curse, and Hermione gained a small amount of happiness, a win-win situation. The sound of an owl flapping its wings could be heard from the skylight, and there would be more letters coming to Hogwarts on weekends. The little silly spectacled owl also brought Lauren a reply from Grandpa Bates. Lauren's letter to Grandpa Bates was sent on the Saturday of the second week of school, and this was already the Saturday of the third week. It shouldn't take more than a week for the owl to reply. Maybe it took some time for Grandpa Bates to reply, but Lauren didn't care. Putting Hannon aside and giving him some cheese and bread cubes, Lauren read the letter. Bates said in the letter that he was not worried about Lauren at all. He only remembered to write a letter to the old man half a month after school started, and the wording was extremely rude. These things would be settled slowly after he came back from vacation. Regarding Lauren's talk about returning to the city, Bates did not directly reply. He said that he would visit some of the old places and asked Lauren to leave it alone. Throughout the letter, Bates was not concerned about any magic school or any magical skills Lauren had learned. He only said at the end of the letter that 2 of the sheep at home had given birth, and it would be perfect for roasting lamb when Lauren came back. Lauren felt warm in his heart after seeing the letter folded and put it in his pocket. Hey, what is suitable for roasting lamb? I just missed him. The old man is just like this, he is just a tough talker. Tomorrow is a full moon night, and I don't know how the old man is doing, or whether he still wants to go to the mountains. Lauren didn't reply immediately. He planned to wait until he got the wolfsbane potion and let Hannon take it back with him. Now that the werewolf thing has come to an end, even the Hannon pecking next to him seems cuter. Lauren reaches out to stroke the spectacled owl's feathers. Hermione was also looking at the owl. She was there when the owl was bought. It looks a little bigger. Lauren nodded and stuffed a piece of pudding into his mouth. You can definitely say it's a lot fatter. Cuckoo. The little spectacled owl, which was focusing on the cheese, raised its head. You are very rude. So what did you name it? Hermione was curious. Lauren's hand froze as she stuffed something into her mouth. Name? It seems that I haven't thought about it, and I keep shouting naively. He tentatively said, Hannon. These 2 words are pronounced in Chinese. The little spectacled owl responded immediately, cuckoo. Hermione repeated it twice, not understanding what it meant, thinking it was just some kind of repeated sound, similar to calling meow, Pip or something like that. I want to borrow Hannon and write a letter to my parents. Hermione hasn't written home since school started. It was the first time that I went to school away from my parents. Even though the mystery of magic was enough to alleviate the loneliness when I was alone, I missed my parents more and more. It was difficult for her to describe to her parents what magic principles she had learned. The tone of the spell would have an impact on the result, just like a middle school student who couldn't speak the grammar of a word or Newton's first law when calling home. The little girl's extracurricular life is also monotonous, and her relationship with her roommate is not very close. For a long time, I only had Lauren as my friend. It was only after a night out that I became familiar with Harry and the 3 of them. After seeing Lauren's correspondence with her family, Hermione decided to write a letter to her parents, telling her that the principal was an old man with a white beard and her favorite Professor McGonagall. Lauren agreed, of course. Merlin's beard. Not far away, Seamus stood next to Ron and Harry, looking at the Daily Prophet in their hands, and exclaimed. The Daily Prophet reported on the trial of Peter Pettigrew and disclosed some information about the trial scene. Peter Pettigrew defected to the Dark Lord in 1981 and betrayed the Potters, resulting in their murder. The Dark Lord also died from this incident. While being chased by Sirius, Peter created an explosion that blew up a street and killed 12 Muggles. He left his finger behind and faked his death. After putting the blame on Sirius, he used illegal animagus to hide in the Weasley family for 10 years. The suspect was exposed by Dumbledore and was captured and handed over to the Ministry of Magic. The Daily Prophet blurred the details of the arrest process. They did not know the inside story and could only make some guesses. At the trial, Peter Pettigrew had nothing to say, but his mother claimed that Peter Pettigrew's actions led to the end of the Dark Lord and that he was a hero and should not be judged. The court dismissed the unreasonable old woman and sentenced Pettigrew to spend the rest of his life in Azkaban. After the report handed over the information about the incident, it praised the Minister of Magic Fudge for his wise leadership in overturning the wrong case left by the previous one. Hogwarts and Dumbledore's achievements are only mentioned in a small paragraph. When Seamus understood the whole thing, he couldn't contain his excitement and repeatedly said Merlin's beard. One of my roommates was a savior who killed the Dark Lord and freed the wizarding world. Another roommate had a Death Eater as a pet at home for 10 years. There was also a roommate who, within a few days of starting school, exposed the Death Eaters who had been hiding for 10 years and vindicated an unjust case. Even the most inconspicuous Neville is a descendant of heroes and a family of warriors. Seamus sighed, suddenly realizing that he was the only one who seemed to be nothing. He frowned and fell into a strange inferiority complex. Harry was very happy. The accomplice who killed his parents was punished and he had a godfather. Harry still had many doubts about what happened back then, scars, and the inexplicable title of savior. Harry's mind was always full of doubts. Ron looked at the report and thought of Scabbers again. He was more disgusted than scared. That day, his pet turned into a short, fat, disgusting middle-aged man in front of him. This was the biggest shock Ron had ever received in his life. The memory of eating and sleeping together with cute pets, and being in love with each other flashed crazily in his mind. Ron covered his head and said, "No, no, no." The more he avoided the memory, the clearer the picture became. Ron couldn't eat any more, gave up resistance, and sat down on the stool with eyes blank. The senior classmates gathered around Percy and the twins, asking if the three of them had been cursed or if they had discovered anyone stealing food in the house in the middle of the night. Percy also looked very sad and didn't say anything. Scabbers had been his pet for a while, and there were many dirty scenes in his memory. George and Fred picked some questions to answer. "Yes, we had a serious illness when we were 6 because of Peter Pettigrew. Being in bed all week. When she was 6 years old, they hid Ban-Ban in the vegetable soup made by Molly and beat her so hard that she couldn't get out of bed for a week. We also discovered something was wrong with Pettigrew and wanted to investigate him." Stopped by Percy. The two wanted to use Ban-Ban as a test subject to do some magic experiments with props. Chapter 41. The Weasley brothers, Simon Neville, and others who knew the inside story did not reveal anything about Lauren. Dumbledore did not tell the Ministry of Magic the specific process of capturing Peter Pettigrew, and the Ministry of Magic did not ask in detail. In other words, no one dared to ask about things that Dumbledore didn't want to say. Fudge gained a lot of fame for nothing, and when he was happy, he didn't look for trouble. It was even more impossible for the Daily Prophet to know the inside story. The others neatly remained silent due to Dumbledore's intervention. Dumbledore had not discussed this matter with Lauren, but the two had reached a tacit understanding. Dumbledore did it for some purpose of protecting students, while Lauren felt that life was very good now and did not want to be exposed to the public eye. In the afternoon, Lauren did not take Hermione to practice. Frequent practice might trigger the talent for correction, but it was hard work. After practicing, summarizing and asking Flamel for more theoretical knowledge about the iron armor curse in the evening is the right path. Lauren wrote and drew on paper, listed the spells one by one, classified them, selected the applicable ones, and tried to build his own combat system. The last spell to achieve victory is not important. Whether it is a disarming spell, a stun spell, a crushing spell or even a life-killing spell, as long as it hits the enemy, it will remove his combat ability. Defense, avoidance, and control before this are the keys to victory or defeat. Among the spells currently accessible, Lauren builds a combat system based on 3 types of spells: defense, control, and attack. The defensive spells are mainly the armor spell Armor Protection and the stopping spell Curse to Stop. Control spells include obstacle spells Many Obstacles, confinement spells Quick Confinement, and restraint spells Petrify All. The attack spells are the cutting spell Fall Apart, the disarming spell Expelliarmus, and the stun spell Feint. Once you've mastered the above spells, all that's left is to develop your battle awareness in the virtual duel room. There is no static system. Lauren will continue to enrich and improve this system as he grows. New spells learned in the future, such as Apparition, Fierce Fire, Shenfeng Wuying, etc. will also be added to it. Real magic masters, like Dumbledore and Grindelwald, will release the most appropriate spells in the shortest time and are good at using transformation spells to create difficult dilemmas for their opponents. It's just that Lauren is still far away from them. Except for the Iron Armor Curse, Lauren can practice all other spells on his own and can fully master them in about 2 months. Flamel, is my plan feasible? Lauren told Flamel what he thought. Flamel pondered for a moment. As a student, it is completely enough. You have to start from the basics. Steps, breathing, and rhythm are more important factors in battle, but Flamel did not mention it. Lauren will naturally understand it when he can use the duel room. Lauren asked for more detailed knowledge about the iron armor curse, and compared the memory and correction content during the day. He summarized a more complete method of use. Sunday, the day of the full moon. Lauren was tired from the moment she got up and couldn't cheer up. Lauren has never been so worried about Bates since he learned he was a werewolf. In the past, he lived next to Bates, knowing that he would go up to the mountain to lock himself up on a full moon night. Lauren had no ability to do anything for Bates, but he always had to feel at ease when he was around. Now that the two places are separated, it seems that there is more than just distance between them. At this time when the moon is about to be full, Lauren's heart cannot calm down. Are you okay? Ron noticed that Lauren was eating slowly, which was really un-Lauren. Lauren forced a smile. It's okay. Ron felt that the matter was serious. Lauren was always the most energetic when eating. Yesterday he could eat a whole steak for breakfast. Ron was about to say something else, but Hermione held him back and shook her head at him. After dinner, Harry took Ron to the stadium to play. Hermione sat next to Lauren and looked at Lauren's face. Follow me. She pulled Lauren out of the courtyard, to another staircase, and went up the escalator. Under the big clock in the Hogwarts clock tower, there is a hollow attic. From here, you can see the Black Lake, the Forbidden Forest, and most of the castle's pavilions. Hermione pulled Lauren to sit down and put her feet outside the attic. The wind passed through the attic from one side to the other. There was still some humid fog in the morning, and the orange-red morning sun spread soft light. I come here sometimes to relax. The broadened horizons will make me feel better. Hermione began to speak. Lauren guessed it was probably because Hermione didn't get along well with her roommate before. Actually, I already knew it. Lauren was a little confused. What do you know? At the beginning, at Flourish and Blott's bookstore, there were many books about magical creatures, goblins, trolls, vampires. I didn't even read it, so I immediately picked up the book about werewolves. Turtle, she is really a know-it-all, she has noticed all this. I also read some information about werewolves. Werewolves will transform and lose their minds during the full moon. This is a painful process. Hermione's voice was a little low. Thinking of Grandpa Bates's old face, Lauren said nothing. And you come to me to practice spells. These are all signs. Lauren wondered, does my practice of spells have anything to do with Grandpa Bates being a werewolf? Tonight is the full moon, you must be feeling very uncomfortable right now. Hermione began to cry a little. Something's not quite right. Lauren, let's go find the professor later. Hermione whimpered. She felt sad that her friend was a werewolf. Lauren realized that Hermione had mistaken him for a werewolf. Looking at the girl who was about to cry louder and louder, he quickly explained, you are overthinking. I am not a werewolf. Humph! Hermione hiccuped and stopped wiping her eyes. Hey. Lauren began to explain that Grandpa Bates was the werewolf, and he had a bad appetite because he was worried about Grandpa Bates. Hermione felt like a fire was burning in her face. This is really shameful. You self-righteously guessed that someone was a werewolf, and then brought someone here to say some incomprehensible things. Yes, I'm sorry, I just made a wild guess. Hermione struggled to stand up in a panic, trying to leave the scene of social death. No, I'm glad to have a friend like you. Lauren held her down, took out a handkerchief and handed it to her. Lauren was initially surprised by Hermione's careful observation and keen deliberation. Although the result is wrong, it is heartwarming in itself that someone is paying attention to your behavior and worrying about the difficulties you may encounter. After comforting Hermione, the two began to chat about some trivial matters, about Hermione and her roommates, about the quarrel between Filch and Peeves, and about the tree over there full of orange berries. Chapter 42. Lauren sat by the window and looked at the full moon hanging in the sky. Ever since he discovered that Grandpa Bates was a werewolf, the full moon had taken on an extra layer of meaning. Several people in the dormitory also noticed Lauren's depression. He didn't speak loudly. He lowered his voice and spoke through his breath. Harry winked at Ron. What's wrong, Lauren? Ron glanced at Lauren secretly, as if he was doing something shameful. It's been like this since this morning, and it's a little better now. Neville asked in a daze, should we ask? I think it's best not to disturb him at this time. Harry had this experience before. When he was in the Dursleys' house, he always wanted to be alone when he was in a bad mood. Lauren heard what they said, exhaled the heavy breath in his chest, and his mood became lighter. He didn't want to go to bed so early, and he didn't want to go to Flamel's place. Lauren felt that he needed to do something else. Let's go on a night tour. Take me one. Simo immediately sat up from the bed, his eyes rounded. I'm not sleepy anymore if you tell me this. Harry and Ron looked at each other and made eye contact. Is he okay? It should be fine. What should we do now? Follow his wishes first. Reaching a tacit understanding, the two nodded. Harry was the first to suggest, I want to see what the three-headed dog is guarding. Ron looked at Harry, his pupils trembling. You really want to go on a night out? After hearing the explosive news, Simo felt that there was a deep barrier between himself and them. There is a three-headed dog in Hogwarts Castle. Seamus suddenly didn't want to go on a night trip. No one paid any attention to this bastard who was lagging behind in news. Of course. Lauren agreed to Harry readily. Anyway, there were checkpoints under the three-headed dog, so it would be fine to prepare Harry in advance. Neville wrapped himself in the quilt tightly. He didn't agree with his roommate going on a night out and seeing the three-headed dog. However, his roommate was in a strong temper now and he didn't want to be a spoiler. You go ahead. If you don't come back at midnight, I will go find the professor. Neville finally made the decision. Seamus, who is a little timid, still doesn't want to miss this adventure. He is already very behind. If he doesn't participate, he will really become a roommate on the background board. Several people walked out of the lounge. Lauren and Harry walked in front, Ron and Seamus followed behind them. Only some scattered candlelight was still on in the corridor, and the people in the portraits became cautious when speaking, for fear of disturbing someone. The grey walls look even darker at night, and something seems to be rushing out of the darkness scattered everywhere at any time. There was uncontrollable excitement on Seamus' face, and he smiled so much that his gums were exposed. When the four people passed by an armor, a long axe suddenly fell down and lay in front of them. Ah! The silence in the corridor was suddenly broken, and there were some faint echoes in the distance. Seamus was so frightened by the axe that suddenly appeared in front of him that he screamed, and his heartbeat suddenly became rapid and heavy. The other three were also startled, but they did not scream. They held their necks and their bodies were stiff and did not dare to move. Whispering complaints also came from the surrounding portraits. What are you doing at this late hour? I'm not letting anyone sleep anymore. A ghost emerged from the armor. It was nearly headless Nick. He looked at several people and laughed out loud. He said in a rough voice with a cheerful feeling, "Ha! Boy, I caught you traveling at night." Harry breathed a sigh of relief, came to his senses, and complained, "Damn Nick, you know you're traveling at night and you're still scaring us." It's been almost a month since school started, and several people have become familiar with Nick, and they usually joke around. Has Filch already patrolled this floor? Lauren felt that Nick would not lure Filch here to arrest a few people. Hey, smart boy, he went upstairs. Nick wanted to talk more. Harry didn't want to delay any longer. They had to go back before midnight, so he pulled Lauren and left quickly. Goodbye Nick, we have something to do. Let's talk later. Nick looked at the retreating figures of several people and muttered, "Impolite boy." Seamus still hadn't come to his senses, so Ron pulled him and said, "Sooner or later, we have to show him how powerful he is." Corridor on the right side of the fourth floor. Lauren waited for Harry and Ron to make a move. After all, they had already been here once. Harry and Ron didn't respond, and they looked at each other at the locked door. "Open the door." Simo couldn't wait any longer. He didn't understand what the people were waiting for in front of the door. Harry and Ron were a little embarrassed. Harry scratched his hair and said, "Last time we came with Hermione, and she opened the door with the unlocking spell. We don't know this spell." Lauren clicked his tongue, "Hermione and two useless boys." Seamus also understood it, and he remembered a gifted spell of his own, which was very suitable for opening doors. Seamus's eyes became brighter and brighter, and he took out his wand. "I have a spell that is very suitable for opening doors." Lauren quickly stretched out his hand to stop it. "The door opening is also very suitable for setting off fireworks after we are expelled." If Seamus was allowed to release door opening here, with explosions and the barking of a three-headed dog, they would be able to issue a notice of withdrawal from Hogwarts. Alajo Cave opens. Lauren learned this spell before school started. The iron lock on the door clicked open. "Well done, Lauren!" Ron praised. Harry hurriedly opened the door and was about to go in when he saw the scene in the room and was stunned. The three people behind noticed that Harry opened the door and blocked the door, motionless, with one hand shaking behind his back. Simo was puzzled. "What are you doing?" Go in. With that said, he pushed Harry in, followed by Lauren and Ron. The scene inside shocked the three people behind. Dumbledore was in the room, placing some food next to the three-headed dog. There was also Harry's familiar mirror of Ariste in the corner of the room. Harry wanted to shout into Seamus's ear, "You're a pig teammate. I gave you such an obvious hint that you didn't want to leave, but you rushed in." The four of them stood blankly at the door, no one spoke first. Simo had a sad face and wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did I finally take part in a night outing and suddenly bump into the principal's gun? Surprise guest! Come meet my friend. This is Lu Wei. I needed to help me guard something that needs to be kept secret. Dumbledore called a few people closer and introduced Lu Wei to them. Lauren was not nervous at all. He felt that Dumbledore should have discovered them and waited here specially. The old headmaster really worked hard to help Harry upgrade. Lauren was not nervous at all. He took a pair of raw meat steaks and handed it to Lu Wei's middle head. He took the opportunity to stroke it and said, "Hello, Lu Wei." The three-headed dog also nuzzled Lauren happily, and then concentrated on chewing the bones. Seamus was stunned. When he walked in, he even thought about how he would drop out of school and admit his mistake to his mother. As a result, "My friend is so fierce." Dumbledore looked at the others who were a little cautious. "When I was a student at Hogwarts, I also went out at night." Ron and Seamus were suddenly attracted to the fact that Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of this century, actually did night travel. But every school rule at Hogwarts has its own reason. Several people's minds were lifted again. "Let this be a little secret between us." Dumbledore winked at a few people and gave a clumsy look. "Long live the principal!" Seamus cheered. Dumbledore took out various candies from his sleeves and greeted a few people. Lauren introduced Ron and Seamus to Dumbledore in turn. "This is Ron, from the Weasley family. This is Seamus, our roommate." Dumbledore was very interested. "Oh, I know, Arthur and Molly's child, we met in the office last time and it was a little rushed." He looked at Ron. "I heard that you are very good at wizard chess." "Yes." Ron was also very happy, but a little reserved, his face turned red. No, I just play chess a lot." Dumbledore turned to Seamus again. "I know that you are very good at a special type of spells." Seamus's face also turned red, and he hesitated for a long time but couldn't say anything. With Lauren's adjustment and Dumbledore's deliberate cooperation, several people started chatting endlessly about their friends, the smart Miss Know-It-All, the timid and kind-hearted Neville. Chapter 43. Lauren suspected that the following levels were not ready yet, and that Dumbledore was testing the military situation. In the original game, the levels were designed based on the strengths of each of Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Now it seems that the level may be more difficult. "No matter what, when the time comes, I will just grab it with my little hand and refuse to participate in this dungeon," making Lauren laugh in his heart. Harry on the side didn't say much, his eyes were focused on the mirror of Ariste. When he couldn't see the mirror before, he felt like he was letting go. Now that the mirror was nearby, Harry couldn't help but glance towards the corner. Dumbledore noticed this scene and said in a gentle voice, "Harry, it is useless to indulge in illusory dreams and forget about real life." The words were neither rushed nor slow, but every word seemed to penetrate into Harry's heart. The strange atmosphere made everyone fall silent, and Dumbledore seemed to be waiting for a few people to think. Only Lauren put the hazelnut chocolate into his mouth and kept making chewing sounds. After a while, Dumbledore smiled and said, "Okay, I think you should go back. Otherwise, Neville may bring Minerva to trouble me later. Goodbye, Headmaster Dumbledore." Several people stood up in a panic and walked back to the dormitory in a daze. "Is Principal Dumbledore criticizing me?" Harry thought that his behavior of always looking into the magic mirror had disappointed Dumbledore. Lauren yawned, "Don't think too much. If you criticize, you will say it directly." Harry didn't speak, his mind couldn't stop and he was always thinking too much. Simo came out of his trance and said, "Is this a night tour? It's very exciting. You don't need to call me next time." "First, I was frightened by a ghost, then I went to see the three-headed dog and then met Dumbledore. It was really exciting, and I almost got expelled. It was Neville who had the foresight. The most important thing is that you can't go out and show off, which is the most uncomfortable thing. We still don't know what the three-headed dog is guarding." Ron discovered the blind spot, and their original intention of traveling at night was not realized. Lauren Yeo shouted, "It's okay. There is still a chance. Lauren didn't say anything else. Next time you'll have to do it yourself. On Friday, after a potions class in the morning, there was a free weekend. In the afternoon, Lauren took Hermione to the room of requirement to practice the iron armor charm. Honestly, I think this spell should be learned when we are older. It's a waste of time now. Hermione frowned and was pulled away by Lauren. It won't happen this time. I've improved a lot. Lauren thought of the 22-0 record last time. This explanation was really unconvincing. Hermione also remembered her last experience and smiled happily. Okay then, I'll let you decide, Mr. 22-0. What weird words are you talking about? I don't understand. Mr. 22-0, Mr. 22-0. All the way to the room of requirement, Hermione still found the title interesting. Both sides stood firm. Are you ready? Ready. The voice came to mind repeatedly in the duel room. Hermione could clearly feel Lauren's progress. He was able to release the magic barrier almost stably, but most of the time it was offset by Hermione's spell, and occasionally it could be reversed in random directions. Throughout the afternoon, Hermione repeated the process of casting spells, and undoing spells. If Hermione was proficient, her binding spell would definitely be upgraded several levels. All petrified, Hermione waved her wand. It was this time that Lauren suddenly had a strange intuition. He pressed the wand down slightly and said at an angle, "Armor protection." Hermione's linear white light hit the tip of Lauren's wand, as if it hit an invisible shield. The shield flickered suddenly, and the linear white light rebounded in the direction it came from, hitting Hermione. Hermione's body tensed up, her hands were on the sides of her pants, her face turned blue, and she fell straight down. "My armor spell can bounce back." Lauren cheered. But there was a more important thing to do. Lauren sat cross-legged next to Hermione and looked into her eyes. "Ahem, Miss Granger, Lauren Morgan has something to discuss with you. If you are willing, just move your eyes." Strong anger welled up in Hermione's eyes, and the meaning was very clear: if you don't break the curse, you will be dead. Lauren pretended to wait for a moment and replied, "Okay, Miss Granger agrees to talk to me. We have reached a contract. If you don't mention 22-0 in the future, I will help you break the curse." After Hermione thought about it for a while, Lauren continued, "If you agree, just move your eyes." Lauren did not pause this time and quickly added, "Then, let's make a deal." Lauren talked to himself and made the deal. So what's the cost? He was beaten all the way back to the restaurant by Hermione. In the basement, Lauren came to his weekly Friday appointment with Snape, and he was ready to have close contact with their respective toads, poisonous snakes, and lizards. Entering the office, Snape was still grading homework. Snape didn't even raise his head when he heard Lauren coming in. "Answer me, what is the role of two-eared grass in Polyjuice potion?" This was from the book list assigned by Snape, and Lauren replied, "Connect with another person." "What is the magical creature that corresponds to the bicorn's habits?" "Skinny cow." The next few questions are all from the previous books on the book list, and Lauren's memory is relatively clear. Lauren answered several questions, and Snape's tone became less aggressive. "Lauren Morgan, you are a rich kid. I just gave out a book list at random, and you took it as an opportunity to get close to me." Snape leaned back on the seat, as if saying something inconsequential things. Lauren didn't refute anything. Silence is always the best answer at this time. "You are a good fit for Slytherin. Your potential can be fully developed here." "I am from a Muggle family, sir." Lauren said, neither humble nor arrogant. "And Gryffindor is a good place." Snape did not continue the topic. "Your information is very flexible. The Wolfsbane potion was developed not long ago. Likewise, its price is also very expensive." After a pause, Snape stood up and led Lauren to the storage room. "I want you to learn some potions from me. The potions you prepare for a long time will be used to pay off debts." Lauren felt that he was actually taking advantage of this matter. The value of personal guidance from a potion master was much higher than that of Wolfsbane potion. "I understand, Professor." Lauren agreed simply. "It will take some time to prepare the Wolfsbane potion. Before that, I will write to my friend Damocles Belby, who has the finished potion. These expenses must also be recorded on your head." "I understand, Professor." Snape dragged over 2 more boxes, and Lauren's legs felt a little weak. But this time the box contained flowers. Snape took out a pair of tweezers with extremely fine tips. "Tonight, you need to separate the stamens of these oozing flowers. Lauren looked at the clusters of small flowers in the box that looked like stars. There seemed to be more than a dozen clusters, each cluster containing about 100 flowers. Do you need to use tweezers to remove the stamens bit by bit? Your eyes will go blind. Professor, don't you have any special magic? Lauren tried to struggle. Snape did not mention the issue of magic, but said lightly, the oozing flower is sensitive and fragile. A slightest inappropriate fluctuation in magic power will cause it to lose its medicinal properties. Lauren sighed, sat down and began to pick the stamens. It's better to take the venom of the green-striped viper. Snape didn't look at him anymore and walked away. Don't worry, you will have the opportunity to come into contact with the green-striped viper in the future. Lauren, I really want to slap myself twice. Chapter 44. Dear Grandpa Bates. How are things? I hope you had a safe full moon night last week. You are so lucky to have met me. Principal Dumbledore of Hogwarts is a warm-hearted person. With the help of the principal and professors, I got a magic potion that can be drunk a week in advance to keep you sane when you transform on a full moon night. Hehe, the disadvantage is that it is very bitter, and adding even a little bit of sugar will make the potion lose its effect. I hope this old man can bear it. The potion comes with the letter. Everything is fine with me at school, no need to worry. Lauren. When Lauren came back from Snape's place, he wrote this letter and prepared it for Hannon to send it out tomorrow. It had been a week since the last time he picked the pistols in Snape's office, and this time Snape didn't let Lauren handle any strange medicinal materials. After testing Lauren's knowledge about potions, he showed him the brewing process of a low-level potion and asked Lauren to hand in a 1-foot paper to him next week. Lauren also got the long-awaited Wolfsbane potion. In a hand-sized bottle, this thing doesn't look like much. The overall color is a coquettish purple color, which looks very poisonous. When you smell it up close, it smells like fermented rotten eggs. It would definitely take a lot of determination for him to drink it. I hope Grandpa Bates is old and his sense of taste has deteriorated, otherwise drinking the potion will not be much easier than turning into a werewolf. Lauren was in a happy mood since he didn't have to deal with potions and got the Wolfsbane potion. As for the thesis, do you know how valuable the water thesis of college students is, not to mention that there is no need to check for plagiarism. After putting the letter away, Lauren got on the bed. Press your finger on the dual room icon and it will appear in the magical book. The classroom has a high ceiling and no tables, chairs, or stools, so it looks a bit empty. Flamel, I think I can give it a try. Lauren said loudly. After a week of practice, he has been able to smoothly cast the iron armor curse. Flamel floated down from the air and landed in front of Lauren with a smile on his face. I'm happy to oblige. Before he finished speaking, Flamel's face blurred for a while, and finally changed into a face familiar to Lauren, exactly like his own. There is no better way to understand yourself than to fight yourself. Flamel bowed to Lauren with his face in front of him. Lauren was a little awkward, fighting with himself, which sounded strange. Flamel coughed twice, and his voice became the same as Lauren's, clear and childish. I won't use spells that you don't know, and the power of my spells will be consistent with yours. Preparation. Lauren concentrated, bowed, and raised his wand in front of him. The iron armor curse is on your lips, ready to be released at any time. Fluorescent flash. Flamel started with a fluorescent spell. Lauren didn't even think about it. Armor protection. The fluorescent spell is not an attack spell, it is not directed at Lauren, and it cannot trigger the magic barrier. The dazzling white light dazzled Lauren, and he subconsciously turned his head and closed his eyes. Lauren can't cast the iron armor charm on his body yet, so only the tip of the wand can play a defensive role. Stimulated by the strong light, Lauren put away his posture and protected his eyes, and the iron armor curse was cancelled. Lauren was defenseless at the moment. He realized this the moment he cancelled the iron armor curse and immediately rolled forward to the right. Flamel was not surprised at all. Back off the enemy 3 feet. The repulse spell is one of the 9 spells taught in the first year. Lauren has previewed it, and even Hermione can cast it. However, the two of them did not pay attention to this curse. Lauren now realized that as long as the time is right, there is no useless spell. The green light hit Lauren, and he felt as if someone was kicking him in the chest. He was knocked back and finally fell to the ground. Flamel stopped his hand and said with a smile, as immature as a child. Lauren held her chest to calm down, rolled her eyes, and said, I am just a child. It was so embarrassing. Lauren thought he could rely on the iron armor curse to defend against 1 or 2 spells. In the end, he didn't survive 2 moves. A fluorescent spell allowed him to cancel the iron armor spell, and a knockback spell eliminated his combat effectiveness. Flamel began to summarize the battle. Don't expect to catch the incoming curse. If you can hide, just hide. If you can use the counter spell, just recite the counter spell. The last option is to let the curse hit you. Never be a target. Lauren's idea of a wizard duel was very childish, with one person chanting a spell, and then the opponent defending against the spell, in a turn-based manner. In fact, some wizards grasp the rhythm of the battle and can quickly release a whole set of spells to make the enemy overwhelmed, until the enemy becomes negligent and seizes the flaw to solve the battle. A skilled wizard can place 2 or even more spells on the opposite side in the time it takes to place one. Come again. Lauren stood up and exhaled, eyes sparkling with excitement. Lauren started his dueling class, and the result was very ugly, and he was also very embarrassed. Lauren was on guard against the fluorescent spell that broke the armor at the beginning, but the fluorescent spell was not limited to the starting position, and could also be interspersed between other spells, seriously disrupting Lauren's vision. Come again. The fire spell squeezed Lauren's movement space, and the softening spell was inadvertently released a few steps behind Lauren, eventually forcing Lauren to step on the floor tile and lose his balance. For the 9 spells in the first grade textbook, Flamel could always come up with various combinations. Interfering with Lauren, controlling Lauren so that he has no time to hide or release the iron armor curse, the last one is a simple retreat the enemy 3 feet. Lauren realized that even the 9 basic spells of the first-year students could be mixed and used to form extraordinary combat effectiveness. After each battle, Flamel would point out Lauren's fault, but would not tell him how to solve it. Lauren could only slowly find his way forward while being kicked away again and again. His combat system didn't work. He was always passive, avoiding, and defensive. What kind of control, interruption has no effect at all. This kind of practical training has achieved remarkable success. At first, Lauren could only use the iron armor curse to support himself. Later, he would occasionally hit Flamel with a cold blow to slow down Flamel's continuous formula. From being able to sustain a few spells to being able to sustain it for 3 minutes. After an unknown amount of time, Flamel stopped. That's it for today. Take it step by step, Lauren. Lauren was actually a little unwilling. He held his breath, thinking that sooner or later, he would hit this old guy with 10 consecutive rounds of repel spells. Touching his chest, it felt like it had been trampled repeatedly by a wild horse. Lauren breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was a conscious body and the injuries would not be brought to reality. Next time he came in, he would be a good man again. Understand the importance of rhythm in battle. Only by grasping the rhythm can you grasp the victory. Flamel was actually very satisfied with such progress for the first time. Lauren's combat awareness was excellent. Most importantly, Lauren has an unyielding will. Some people will become depressed after being beaten repeatedly, and their dueling style will tend to be defensive, but real warriors cannot be defensive. Chapter 45. Wednesday, October 23rd. This is the day when first graders use telescopes to observe the stars and learn the names of different stars and the paths of the planets. It is said that many magics are related to the stars. Lauren noticed that today's moon was just after full moon, with some inconspicuous defects. Last night was a day with a full moon. Grandpa Bates should have tried Wolfsbane potion, but I don't know how effective it was. Lauren looked at the bright light of Mars, thinking about Grandpa Bates, and planned to write a letter to him. Grandpa Bates couldn't take the initiative to contact Lauren. He always had to wait until he wrote before he could reply. Hermione also noticed the moon today. She came close to Lauren and patted his arm gently without saying anything. A warm current surged through Lauren's heart. He raised his head and smiled at Hermione. The Wolfsbane potion has been sent to Hanin. Grandpa Bates shouldn't be too sad last night. Last time at the clock tower, Lauren talked about the Wolfsbane potion. Although Lauren seemed fine, Hermione stayed with him and didn't mention the werewolf. Just talk about the moon after the full moon is also beautiful, talk about the light of Mars. When returning to the lounge, a group of people met Professor Quirrell. The smell of fermented garlic grew stronger as time passed, and Quirrell could smell it from across the corridor, as could Lauren and the others. The students slowed down and planned to wait for Professor Quirrell to leave this floor before passing through the corridor. The 2 brothers, George and Fred, followed Professor Quirrell sneakily, eager to try on his scarf, but they followed him all the way until Quirrell went upstairs, and the twins had no chance. Lauren and the others had encountered this kind of scene many times, and everyone was looking forward to the twins being able to embarrass Quirrell. There was no one sitting in the front row of defense against the dark arts class now. Last time Hufflepuff's Hannah Abbott was unlucky enough to arrive late and sit in the front row. She couldn't walk right after class and was sent to the school doctor's office with a pale face. Although Madame Pomfrey said that she had eaten something wrong the day before, everyone believed that Professor Quirrell was the main reason. Seamus agrees very much. If I hadn't been physically strong, I would have been in the school infirmary last time. Ron analyzed it and found that as Professor Quirrell's smell became more intense, no one would be allowed to sit in the second row in the future. Let's see, one day Quirrell will send all the students to the school doctor's office. Ron said. From then on, everyone would go to the defense against the dark arts classroom an hour early. The unlucky ones who didn't get a seat were either squeezed into the back row or went straight to the school doctor's office pretending to be sick. Percy was hesitant about whether to report this to Professor McGonagall. He believed that as a student, he should not criticize the professor, and ultimately chose not to do anything. The twins said that sooner or later, they would get Percy in the front row and get close to Quirrell. Things just kept dragging on. The twin brothers were very disappointed when they saw Quirrell escaping from their ambush range. Each of them said, "Soldier Fred, once again we have let go of a serious threat." "Yes, Chief George." Then a chorus of "I've got another great idea." Lauren and the others saw the twins cheering up again and walking away laughing. Hermione noticed some details. "Have you noticed that Professor Quirrell's face seems paler?" Ron laughed so hard that his eyebrows flew up. "A vampire must have found him and sucked his blood." Harry also smiled and added, "So he fermented more garlic in his scarf, hoping to drive away vampires." Ha 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 ha. The classmates around were all amused by this joke. Seamus questioned, "But vampires in the magical world are not afraid of garlic." Ron quickly thought of another possibility. He plans to marinate himself to make the vampire so disgusted that he doesn't want to suck his blood. Everyone was amused again, and even Hermione was diverted. Lauren laughed while recalling the plot. It was Voldemort and Quirrell who couldn't hold on any longer. Thinking about it, they were about to go to the Forbidden Forest to hunt for blood. Lauren planned to remind Hagrid. During lunch on Friday, Lauren received a reply from Grandpa Bates. The letter said that although he would still be weak for a while after the transformation, he could indeed control his body and not hurt others even if he didn't go to the cave or lock himself up. Grandpa Bates plans to start traveling and visit his hometown, and then maybe visit other old places in his memory. At the end of the letter, he questioned Lauren. He suspected that Lauren had deliberately put something into the medicine, which made it so painful that even a 70 or 80-year-old man could not bear it. Adding the sentence that sugar must not be added, it seemed more like a prank was played. "You'd better pray I don't catch you, or Grandpa will squeeze the sheep's bile out of your mouth." Lauren smiled at Grandpa Bates' childish words. It seemed that the Wolfsbane potion really made him relax a lot. Lauren was very supportive of Grandpa Bates going on a trip. The werewolf problem had trapped him in the mountains for decades, and it was a good thing to be freed and able to travel around. In the evening, it was completely different from before. This time Lauren came to Snape's office in a happy mood. "Come in." Once again, Lauren was noticed without knocking. He suspected that wizards of a certain level would have extraordinary perceptions. Snape wasn't marking homework, he was replying to a letter. Lauren sat across from Snape, with a graded paper already on the table. It's the one-foot article that Lauren submitted last time. Although it has lost some words, the main points are still extracted by Lauren combined with Snape's teachings, and it is not written according to the script. The annotations above are very detailed, and Lauren benefited a lot from reading them word for word. One person writes letters, another person reads papers, and the office falls into a harmonious calm. Lauren had accepted Snape, putting aside the grievances and grudges from decades ago, putting aside the matters of Voldemort and Death Eaters. He was a qualified potions professor. When Snape put the letter into the envelope, Lauren also put down the paper and immediately expressed his gratitude to Professor Snape and told about Bates's good condition. Snape did not reply immediately. He looked at Lauren, his eyes still calm, but without the sense of spying of a cold-blooded animal. "Potion, a great subject. Lucky people can glimpse glory, immortality, and rejuvenation. You happen to have a little talent. Walk this road with reverence, it's all for yourself." Lauren felt that Snape was saying something specious again, but his tone made people think. Voldemort chose Horcruxes, and Nico Flamel used the Philosopher's Stone. Does potion really have a path to the ultimate secret? Before Lauren could think about it, Snape started today's teaching. Chapter 46. Snape's words kept echoing in Lauren's ears, making him think about immortality. There are many paths to eternal life in the magical world, but they are all imperfect. The ghost of the Eagle Yard, Ms. Grey, formerly known as Helena Ravenclaw, is the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, one of the founding four. After she was killed by the Bloody Barrow, she turned into a ghost and has been living in Hogwarts for thousands of years. Professor Binns of the History of Magic can give lectures and assign homework to answer students' questions, almost as well as he did in life. A portrait with wisdom, a sorting hat that has been passed down for thousands of years. They have memories and can think, which is considered a kind of immortality. Hirebo created the Horcrux, but the cause of his death was very vague, with only some speculations without evidence. Voldemort explored the secrets of Horcruxes and made himself bloodthirsty and crazy. Nico Flamel's elixir was merely life-sustaining, and his body became extremely fragile over time. Maybe in a few decades, a gust of wind could blow Nico into pieces. It seems that there are roads that can lead to eternal life everywhere, and it seems that every road is preceded by a cliff. Lauren had a guess. In fact, the person closest to immortality was Principal Dumbledore. The Dumbledore family has a phoenix that can be reborn. Everyone who learns the Patronus charm knows that the Patronus is not a magical animal, but Dumbledore's Patronus is a phoenix. Dumbledore is also very good at fire magic, and with the help of Fawkes, he can use space magic at Hogwarts. So what about the ability of Nirvana? Could it be that Dumbledore could also rise from the ashes, but in the end he chose to die? Even after death, Dumbledore was able to meet Harry in the trance, which was enough to demonstrate his extraordinary control over life. Flamel, can you make the elixir of life without the help of the magic stone? Lauren chose to turn to Flamel for help. Flamel carefully sorted out his long memory. In fact, there are many legends about immortality. Flamel talked about the golden apple in Nordic mythology, the flat peach in Eastern mythology, the Holy Grail of Jesus, and the legendary Fountain of Youth. Civilizations separated by oceans and mountains have very similar legends about immortality. Some legends obviously have the same prototype. Lauren thought along this line of thinking. It's possible that they were the immortals in the past. When they traveled to these civilizations, they left behind legends. Before entering the age of navigation, only wizards could cross the barriers between oceans and mountains. Flamel guided Lauren's thinking. Lauren clapped his hands and suddenly understood, a long time ago, there was a wizard who achieved immortality, and then used his long life to explore the entire world. His tone was very exciting and did not stop, just like Nico, same as Sir. Lauren had new doubts. What about the former immortals? Where are they now? Flamel did not continue exploring with Lauren. He flew into the air. Who knows, maybe their immortality is also flawed, and they still did not escape the pursuit of death in the end. It's time for us to get started today. As for tracing the truth behind the ancient legend, it is difficult to have a real answer. In the end, Lauren dismissed these conversations as after-school chat, and Snape's words were put aside for the time being. Lauren attends classes at Hogwarts during the day, takes language and dueling classes at Book of Magic in the evenings, goes to Snape's office on Fridays to help with potions, and learns about the preparation of various potions, and spends weekends in the library with Hermione chew the tome together. This kind of life routine is simple, time passes by unconsciously, and it soon comes to Halloween. The elf has been preparing for the dinner since the morning. The corridor has been filled with the sweet scent of pumpkin. Smelling this smell, it is as if the sweet and thick flesh of the pumpkin is right next to the mouth, making people secrete saliva unconsciously. During the charms class, the sweet smell of pumpkin in the classroom became even stronger. In such an environment, only Hermione could concentrate on listening and take notes without any distractions. It smells so good. Lauren sighed from time to time. Ron and Seamus swallowed their water and nodded in agreement. Harry sat next to him, stretched his head over, and whispered, "Neville's leaf is missing again. Let's look around and see if it's under the desk." This is a very common thing, and everyone skillfully lowers their head and looks for toads on the ground. Merlin's beard. Ron opened his mouth wide and sighed, "I think I may have found it." Everyone followed his line of sight and said in unison, "Oh." Lyford had already jumped onto the stool that Professor Flitwick was standing on, and was about to jump on the professor, as if he wanted to jump to the podium through the professor's body. Neville couldn't bear to look any further. He lowered his head and almost buried his head in the table. Lyford jumped twice and jumped onto Professor Flitwick's shoulders. Professor Flitwick was standing on a stool and was talking about the levitation charm when a toad suddenly jumped out and stepped on his white beard. The students below all laughed, except for Neville, who wanted to turn himself into a toad and jump out of the classroom. Professor Flitwick was not angry. He straightened his nose and smiled. It seems that I spoke so well that even the toad wanted to get close to me. The students made more happy sounds. Neville raised his head, covered his blushing face with his hands, and looked at Professor Flitwick through his fingers. Just for you to demonstrate. Professor Flitwick said, turning to look at the toad on his shoulder, and pointed the wand at Leaf, Wingardium Leviosa. The toad flew into the air and circled at a constant speed around the classroom. Cool! There were exclamations from the audience. Leaf flew in front of each student, finally stopping in front of Neville and landing on his desk. Neville looked at Professor Flitwick, who was smiling gently at Neville. Watch your pet, and next time it runs around, let it fly a few more times. Neville was so excited that he couldn't speak, and kept nodding. Professor Flitwick ignored this episode and said, let's move on to the levitation spell, which was invented by the wizard Jareth Hobart in the 16th century. After the scene just now, the students became more eager to learn the levitating spell and became more focused. The influence of the pumpkin smell was thus weakened a lot. Soon, Professor Flitwick showed his skill again. He used a levitating spell to send a handful of feathers into the air and distributed them to each group of 2 students. According to location, Harry and Neville are in the same group, Lauren and Hermione are in the same group, and Ron and Seamus are in the same group. Okay, don't forget that subtle wrist movement we have been training. Professor Flitwick stood taller, and he added a pile of books to the stool. 1 wave, 1 shake, remember 1 give it a shake. It is also very important to recite the spell accurately. Wizard Barafio said a wrong letter. He said F instead of S. As a result, he found himself lying on the ground with a bison standing on his chest. After some instructions, the professor allowed the students started trying. Professor Flitwick kept a close eye on them in case a buffalo suddenly appeared in the classroom. Chapter 47. Lauren had mastered the spell and looked at the feathers boredly. He was thinking about the plot. Quirrell would introduce the troll into the castle tonight, but Hermione probably wouldn't go to the toilet. Hermione and everyone are now considered friends, and everyone has adapted to Hermione's pointing, and it will be over after a while, and no one will care about it. So Hermione wouldn't be so angry that she would hide in the bathroom and cry, and no one would be in danger at night. Hermione, who was being chanted, was facing the feather teaching aide with a serious face. She had previewed this spell before, but failed. She followed Professor Flitwick's instructions sternly, and within a few moments, her feathers began to tremble. Ron gave up after trying a few times. His wand was too old and it depended on luck whether he could cast the spell. Obviously, bad luck today. Hermione had let her feathers fly, and Professor Flitwick gave Gryffindor 5 points for it. Hermione wanted to give Ron some experience. It's Wingardium Leviosa, not Wingardium Leviosa. Of course. I'll pay attention next time. Ron didn't want everyone to notice his wand, so he changed the topic. Maybe you should look at other people. Lauren didn't want the two to conflict, and tried to make Hermione understand that it was not Ron's problem. Ron's wand was dragging him down, and it was not a problem with the spell or movement. Hermione looked at Ron's wand with its unicorn tail hair core exposed, and quickly apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't notice your wand. No, it's okay. Ron felt uncomfortable, feeling inferior. He wanted people to think that he was not casting according to the rules, rather than to notice his wand. All Ron's things were used by his brother at home. There were no new clothes, no new textbooks, no wands of his own, and even the pets were leftovers from Percy. It was fine when I was at home, and I just came here laughing and joking. He never blamed his parents. It was not their fault. His parents had tried their best to maintain life at home. He could feel the love from his parents in every aspect of his life. After arriving at school, the ubiquitous comparison with his classmates became a thorn in his heart. From the first time I bought snacks on the train, that emotion appeared for the first time and took root in my heart. At that time, I could comfort myself, this was the famous Harry Potter, and being rich was normal. Later I discovered that it was not that my classmates were too rich, but that my family was too poor. As a pure-blood family, it is even more difficult than Muggle children. Compared with his brother, he also seems mediocre. Bill's grades are excellent, Charlie is the Quidditch captain and a prefect, Percy is also a prefect, and even the twins have good grades. Although they are naughty, many professors like them very much. He also wanted to study hard before enrolling so as not to embarrass the name Weasley. However, in a magic school, the wand problem puts him in a difficult position. He is always mischievous and makes jokes just to cover up his inferiority complex. Ron knew his friends wouldn't care, but he couldn't help but think about it. I can't tell others my bitter thoughts, I can't tell my parents, I can't tell my brother, I can't even speak to my friends, I can only hold it in. Seamus was still trying on the feathers. He noticed that Ron was a little depressed and thought it was because of the failure of the spell. Seamus encouraged, "Hey! Brother, cheer up! Look at me, it will work this time." After saying that, he chanted the spell loudly towards the feathers and pointed hard, "Yinjatum Leviosa." Boom! Seamus' talent worked again. The feathers exploded, turning Seamus' face black. Ron's face also turned black. The students around him laughed out loud, and Ron's mood worsened. During the Halloween dinner, the ceiling was enchanted by the professors, dark clouds filled the castle, and lightning thundered. Set against the suspended pumpkin lanterns in the air, it creates a very scary atmosphere. On the table, there are lemon wave candy, cream chocolate balls, roast lamb, fried steak, fried sausages, and all kinds of pumpkins. After smelling the aroma of pumpkin all day, I finally tasted it. Lauren scooped up a spoonful of stewed pumpkin and put the whole spoonful into his mouth. Juice oozed from the sweet pumpkin flesh and melted in one sip. While eating, Neville talked about what happened in the charms class. "I think Professor Flitwick is the best professor." Everyone was busy eating, and no one refuted his point. Seamus stuffed the whole chicken leg into his mouth, which was Ron's favorite thing to do in the past, and he wanted to compete with Ron. Looking around, Seamus found that there was no sign of Ron on the entire long table. He took out the chicken legs and said vaguely, "Have you seen Ron?" Harry said, "He said he didn't feel very well and went to the toilet, so he asked me to go first." After a pause, he added, "I think he hasn't been happy since the beginning of the charms class, and he didn't have much energy when playing in the afternoon." Lauren's eating hand froze. "No way." Boom! Quirrell pushed open the door of the restaurant, ran in a panic, stood in the middle of the restaurant and shouted, "Troll! In the basement! There's a troll in the basement!" No one heard the last sentence clearly, and Quirrell fainted. "Ah!" Screams rang out, the students exploded, and the first-year students began to run around. "Quiet!" Dumbledore said with a loud voice and arranged for the prefects to take the students from their respective houses back first. He organized the professors to check the situation. Lauren wanted to go to Dumbledore to explain the situation, but the restaurant was so crowded that it was impossible to get through. Everyone rushed to the door. People from the 4 colleges mingled together and pushed him to the main entrance along with the flow of people. Dumbledore and the professors had already left through the side doors on both sides of the guest seat. Walking out of the restaurant door, the crowd dispersed. People from each college gathered together and headed to their respective dormitories under the leadership of their prefects. Lauren and Harry looked at each other and reached a consensus that they still had to find Ron. Lauren knew that Ron would definitely encounter a troll, but Harry thought that Ron didn't know about it yet and had to inform him. Lauren wanted to leave some backup, so he stopped Seamus and Neville. "You guys went to find the professor, so we went to the toilet to find Ron." "Okay." Seamus and Neville didn't want to follow and cause trouble. Lauren and Harry quickly headed towards the toilet. Hermione looked at the 2 figures walking away, stretched out her hand, held her wand, and followed them. Passing the corner, Harry heard footsteps. He looked up and saw a green cloak disappearing up the stairs. It was Slytherin clothing, only Snape would wear it. Harry wondered in his heart, why didn't Professor Snape join the other professors? Before she had time to think about it, Hermione caught up with them and said seriously, "I'm with you. I made Ron feel bad in charms class. It's not a friendly act to point fingers at others." Harry had no sense of urgency. He thought he was just going to the toilet to call Ron. "It's okay. The troll is in the basement." Seamus and the others also notified the professor. "There won't be any danger. When the professor arrives, I'm afraid Ron will be digested." Lauren was in a hurry and planned to rush to the toilet before the troll and try not to run into it head-on. Lauren already knew many magical creatures. The giant monster has thick skin, high magic resistance and great strength. It is difficult for several adult wizards to deal with it. There is no chance for these little losers to win. At least for now. The scene in the movie where you use the levitating curse to seize the giant monster's stick and knock it out is no different from when you are facing a tiger and use a sliding shovel to knock it away. Chapter 48. In order to fit the Halloween atmosphere, the decorations in the castle were enchanted, and the lights and candlesticks on the road were extinguished. The entire first floor was still shrouded in dark clouds, flashing with lightning and slightly exaggerated thunder, like a shoddy theater stage. There is a small aisle on the side of the corridor, and at the end of the aisle is the toilet. There was a sound of soft footsteps, and Lauren and the three of them ran into the corridor side by side and rushed outside the toilet. Ron's faint sobs could be heard inside. Lauren breathed a sigh of relief and caught up, but the troll hadn't arrived yet. Hermione looked guilty. Go and call Ron out, let's go back as soon as possible. Harry pushed open the wooden door of the toilet, and the aged loose leaves made a creaking sound. Harry also felt some urgency in his heart, and within a few words, Harry pulled Ron out. Ron's nose was red, and he was afraid to look at Lauren and Hermione. He blamed himself a little, blaming himself for causing his friends to go out of their way to look for him. A few people nodded and walked outside without saying much. Roar! A howl made the four Laurents take back their steps. Why so unlucky? Ron felt as if something was strangling his neck, and his breathing became labored. Bang started ringing outside. Boom! Boom! The footsteps of the troll. Just by listening to the sound, you can imagine what a huge monster the troll is. Hermione unconsciously leaned next to Lauren and grabbed his sleeve tightly. The troll is in the corridor. Harry turned pale with fright. Retreat to the toilet and hide, waiting for the troll to pass through the corridor to other places. Lauren groaned secretly, planning to drag him until the professors came over. There was a backbone in the panic, which made the other people feel more at ease. The four of them retreated to the toilet, locked the door and leaned together, holding their breath and not daring to speak. Bang! Boom! Boom! The dull footsteps of the troll became clearer and louder as it entered the corridor from the corridor. Cold sweat began to break out on Ron's forehead, and Lauren felt Hermione trembling next to him. The troll is almost outside the door. Hide in the compartment. Lauren commanded in a low voice. The four of them crept into the innermost compartment and stared at the toilet door through a crack. Wow! The wooden door panel was kicked into pieces like a toy, and a flat, thick, calloused foot appeared at the door. Accompanied by a disgusting stench, Lauren and the others saw a real troll for the first time. The skin was dull and as grey as granite. The troll has a huge body with a small, bald head like a coconut, and long arms. The little wizard is like a toy in front of it. The pressure caused by the huge body made several people feel that their heartbeats were being strangled, and they would die if they were touched. This was what several people thought in their hearts. The monster's eyes were densely covered with scarlet bloodshot eyes, making it very ferocious. It seemed to have some goal. It walked towards a row of cubicles and waved the wooden stick in its hand horizontally. Squat down and run! Lauren yelled loudly, kicked open the compartment door in an instant and pulled several people to flee. An entire row of cubicles was hammered to a crisp, with pieces of wood scattered everywhere. Several people were leaning against the wall to confront the troll, with a distance of 5 or 6 meters between the two sides. Roar! The troll stared directly at Harry and opened his mouth to roar. Wingardim Leviosa! Lauren quickly tried to move towards the wooden stick in the troll's hand, but the floating spell didn't respond at all, and the wooden stick was still firmly held in the troll's hand. Tong tong petrochemical! Split into pieces. Harry and Hermione also took action quickly, and the light of the curse hit the troll's thick skin, but had no effect. The giant monster slowly approached a few people, and a feeling of powerlessness enveloped them, making people feel a little desperate. Door opens. Lauren tried his most powerful spell, but it still didn't work. Remembering Flamel's teachings in dueling class, Lauren changed his strategy. Burning flame, he poured every part of his body into this spell. Red flames rose and rolled around the floor. The edge of the fire wave rolled into the giant monster's skin, burning it back and blocking the giant monster's progress. Lauren and all four of them could feel the heat wave coming towards their faces. Lauren smiled a little weakly. He used to cast spells all afternoon and he was not tired this time. Well done. A few people didn't have time to be happy. The flames quickly converged and dissipated. The floors and corridors of Hogwarts have special defense measures, and the spell will not have the greatest effect. Oops! The unfinished admiration turned into a cry of despair. Lauren was a little exhausted, his eyes were distracted, and his lips were twitching. What else can be done? What else can be done? Flamel's teachings flashed through his mind over and over again, and he found in despair that all the techniques were ineffective. Wingardim Leviosa. Burning flames. Hermione's clear voice sounded, and Lauren's approach inspired her. After casting the floating spell and the fire spell one after another, the surrounding broken boards levitated, and blazing flames rose up, surrounding the giant monster, preventing the giant monster from getting close. The fireball floated in the air, the heat wave stirred up the convective wind, the little witch's hair was flying, her robes were fluttering, and the fiery red light reflected on her fair face, making her dazzling. The flames made the giant monster retreat continuously. This time it was a real and effective retreat from the enemy. The troll is very bulky, and once it retreats to the corridor, Lauren and the others can escape in another direction. Several boys looked at Hermione with admiration as she waved her wand with one hand. Long live Granger! Ron couldn't help shouting. He relaxed and clenched his hands into fists, shaking unconsciously. Not bad, he thought to himself. Lauren and Harry took a breath. The two of them also joined in, using floating spells and flames to push the giant monster out. Flames surrounded the giant monster, shaking it from time to time. The troll backed away, then backed away, growing more and more impatient, and roared as it exited the toilet. Roar! The troll swung his stick and hit the ball of fire flying in the air. Bang! Sparks scattered. The hearts of several people skipped a beat. Hermione and Lauren used the floating spell to make the fireball hover more flexibly, avoid the sticks, and push back the troll. Balls of fire took off and circled, and things seemed to be steadily improving. The surrounding wooden blocks flew up one by one and were ignited until there were less and less firewood on the ground. Hermione quickly discovered the problem and said urgently, "No, there won't be enough wood blocks if this continues. They are still in the middle of the aisle, and the wooden blocks will be consumed when burning in the air, and will be consumed when being hit by the troll. The remaining number was not enough to sustain them in the corridor, and they were still trapped and died in this corridor." Despair enveloped the four people again. Sweat broke out on several people's faces and backs. It was unclear whether it was because of the flames or fear. No one said anything. Hermione's mouth was pressed together and she waved her wand. "Now I can only pray that the professors will arrive as soon as possible." The rising flames became smaller as the floating fireballs became smaller, and the last few wooden boards flew up. A few sparse flames separated the giant monster from Lauren and the others. The giant monster's retreat gradually slowed down. Roar! Even though the giant monster had no brains, it felt that there were fewer fireballs. It waved its giant stick wantonly to disperse these fireballs and walked towards a few people. Ron was trembling with fear, so scared that he could hardly stand. If he hadn't gone to the toilet, he thought he would pee. Snot flowed from Ron's red nose. Why? He is a drag, a waste, and the least promising one in the family. With things like this already, why do I have to encounter something like this? Even though he couldn't do anything, he still had to watch his friends die with him. He was really scared, so scared that his friend would die in front of him. Harry is the savior, how could he die because of me? Run! Ron shouted at the top of his lungs, with snot and tears streaming down his face. He rushed towards the troll, trying to attract its attention so that his friends could escape. "Come on, you bastard!" The stench permeating the giant monster's body was roasted by the flames into another strange, slightly burnt smell. But Ron couldn't notice anything now. The red-haired Weasley was kicking the troll's feet like a madman. He wanted to cause some damage to the troll. The fists and feet hit the giant monster's thick skin like hammers on some rocks, but had no effect at all. Ron was quickly kicked out by the troll, hit the wall, and fell down. He curled up into a ball, clutching his stomach and motionless. He was so painful that he couldn't scream, and bright red blood flowed from his mouth. "Even if I fight with my life, I still can't do anything, I'm a waste." Chapter 49. Hermione cried in a low voice. In such an environment, even crying was suppressed. Harry's scar stung slightly and his pupils dilated slightly. Her ears felt as if they were sinking into the sea. Hermione's cries and the footsteps of the troll became very far away, like listening to the sound of waves under the water. The world became quiet and everyone else's movements slowed down. He looked at Ron huddled against the wall, and remembered the scene when he saw their family at the train station. They were a noisy family, and they all had red hair. It was so interesting. He watched the troll slowly lift the wooden stick, the texture of the muscles on the forearm, the gaps in the troll's nails, the black dirt on the wooden stick, every detail seemed to be imprinted in his mind. What a huge monster! Am I as big as his thumb? There should be. The scene of the troll slowly approaching reminded Harry of the time when he was chased by Dudley's group in the Muggle school. I run every time, but actually I don't really want to escape. Harry felt that the muscles in his body were no longer so tense and relaxed. Bow slightly, bend your knees, and sprint. He couldn't think of any magic that could solve the current situation. He could only use what he had always wanted to try when he was being chased by others, rush into those people's faces. Harry didn't know what to do when he rushed in front of the troll, but his body had already given him the answer. Like a bowtruckle climbing a giant tree, Harry seemed to be moving on a grey-green hill. He climbed up the troll's waist nimbly, dodging the troll's hands and the waving stick. Riding on the giant monster's head. He saw a panic look in the giant monster's scarlet eyes. Harry opened his shoulders, bent his arms, made a fist, and did what Harry had always wanted to do to many people, punch it hard on the nose. Roar! The giant monster howled. This punch obviously did no harm, but the troll felt as if something had been broken on his body, causing great panic. The troll was so enraged by the little thing on its head that it wanted to crush the little thing and hammer it to pieces. One hand grabbed Harry's leg and held it up in front of him, while the other hand was about to hit Harry. Do something! Harry yelled, his voice a little dull because he was hanging upside down and his head was filled with blood. Shadows floated in Lauren's eyes, and blue light lit up from the pupils and spread to the entire eyeballs. In his field of vision, the troll's skin glowed slightly brown, and on its nose, where Harry punched it, there was a black mottled mark. That's its weakness. Hey! Lauren controlled himself and stopped his shaky breathing. Do something. In my mind, the incantation that had been unclear after being corrected by open door became clear. He squeezed the power from every part of his body and poured it all into the wand. Lauren heard his own voice. Thunderbolt piercing. The tip of the wand emits a blazing red light, shooting straight at the black mark on the troll's nose. Boom! The red light penetrated through the nose and shot out from the back of the head, making a strong explosion sound. A black hole the size of a fist was blown open in the troll's brain. The monster swayed twice and fell backwards stiffly. Harry fell to the ground and screamed in pain, seemingly fine. A satisfied smile appeared on Lauren's lips. After firing the spell, he couldn't move a finger now. I had a splitting headache, as if I hadn't slept for 3 days and 3 nights. My eyes felt like they had been dripped with wind oil essence, and it was so cold that I couldn't hold on anymore and fell down. Lying on the ground, he vaguely saw Dumbledore and others coming in, Hermione crying and throwing herself into the arms of Professor McGonagall, and Percy walking towards the curled-up Ron. The world fell into darkness. Ron's voice, run. Harry's voice, do something. Finally it was Hermione's voice, Lauren, Lauren. The voice sounded like it was in my ears, but also like I was in a dream. Lauren felt limp all over and didn't want to wake up. When I opened my eyes, I saw bright lights and my eyes felt a little stinging. There are 3 beds in the school doctor's room, with white sheets and cabinets, and they are sparkling clean. Lauren was lying in the middle, Ron was asleep at the end, and Harry was near the door. Harry was counting the lattice on the window, 788, 789, 781. Lauren sat up straight and said, "Did you find that you counted wrongly?" His voice was hoarse. Harry exclaimed in surprise, "Thank God, I'm not alone at last." Lauren picked up the kettle on the bedside table and poured water to drink. He felt that his throat was filled with gravel. Harry happily told Lauren what he knew. He woke up early the next morning and Lauren slept all day and night. Ron had several broken ribs and damage to his internal organs, but Madame Pomfrey said it would be fine in a week. But Ron hasn't woken up yet. Harry's voice was a little low. Harry stayed in bed all day with nothing to do. He felt that he was completely recovered, but Madame Pomfrey would not allow him to leave the hospital or get out of bed to move around. Harry kept mumbling. "Hermione will come over after class. Madame Pomfrey said that talking to you will wake you up earlier. Hermione has called your name thousands of times. Professor Dumbledore will come over tonight and he needs to ask you about the situation again. That curse of yours is so cool, it can actually penetrate the monster's head." At this point, Harry asked, "Why didn't you use it earlier?" Lauren could tell there was no accusation in the words, just pure confusion. Lauren looked at Harry and said, "Because of you, my spell can work." Me? Harry recalled the scene at that time. I was in a strange state and rushed forward without thinking about anything. It's really strange, how could I rush up? Only then did Harry notice the strangeness at that time, and Ron, he seemed a little strange at the time. Before the two could discuss the outcome, Madame Pomfrey opened the door and came in. "Lie down. Don't talk," she shouted at Harry. Harry didn't dare to resist, so he shut his mouth and lay down. Madame Pomfrey gave Lauren a mint-flavored potion. After drinking it, Lauren felt that her head was cold and comfortable, and her body felt warm and comfortable. "You've almost drained your own magic power." Pomfrey looked at Lauren seriously. "This is a very serious matter for the little wizard." Although her tone was stern, Madame Pomfrey's eyes held gentle concern. Without giving Lauren time to answer, she continued, "If you weren't at Hogwarts, this might cause your magic to go out of control and you would no longer be able to perform magic. Have a good rest and don't make any noise." Madame Pomfrey said and went out. Watching the doctor close the door, Harry sat up. "I think we've..." "Quiet!" Madame Pomfrey shouted from outside. Harry curled his lips and counted slowly towards the window. 1, 2, 3. In the evening, Hermione came with Dumbledore. The little witch changed into a clean and tidy Gryffindor robe, long white socks and small leather shoes. Her cute appearance did not reveal the majesty of waving a wand to block the troll. Hermione walked in and saw Lauren sitting up, grinning, showing her 2 white front teeth, and her eyes were filled with joy. "Lauren!" Hermione shouted happily, and then took out her notebook from her bag. "I have written down the notes for these classes in my notebook. You can refer to my notes and learn from them. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me." "Thank you." Lauren was quite speechless, put away the notebook, and looked at Dumbledore behind Hermione. Dumbledore always had a gentle smile on his face. He did not interrupt his friend's meeting. Lauren only spoke when he looked at him. "You can always see things that others can't. I want to see your perspective." The white-bearded principal took out a bag of candy from the sleeve of his white robe. No one would refuse a friend who brings candy to visit the sick. Yet, Harry cheered, and Lauren began to share his experience of that night from his perspective. At that time, Harry was about to be hammered. Lauren's innate vision was activated, and he saw that the troll's body was covered with a brown barrier, except for the black mark left by Harry on its nose. Lauren followed that mark and activated the spell. In addition, I vaguely saw red lights on both Harry and Ron. This is what Lauren saw before he fell unconscious. Chapter 50. Black Mark. Dumbledore thought about this and looked at Harry's scar, his eyes darkening. Voldemort's influence on Harry was deeper than he thought, and the connection between the two seemed closer. He suspected that the black mark that broke the troll's skin was because Harry had inadvertently used the power left in the scar by Voldemort. Regarding the condition of the scar, Dumbledore had some thoughts, but did not show it on his face. Perhaps some changes should be made to Quirrell's plan. Wonderful opportunity. Dumbledore turned to look at Hermione, Ron, and Harry in turn, and praised, "Wisdom, sacrifice, courage, even just listening to your narration, I can see the brilliance of these qualities." Harry and Hermione blushed when they heard this. Lauren clicked his tongue, not taking it seriously. "Is there a reward?" Dumbledore refused to answer the question and looked into Lauren's eyes. "I have some vague guesses about the strange light you saw." Several people looked at Dumbledore curiously. The wizard's magic is closely related to the soul and emotions. I think that when you first discovered that you were unusual, your emotions were also unusual. Harry recalled some of his magical experiences, when he was chased by Dudley's group and ended up flying up a chimney. At the zoo, he wanted to give Dudley a little power, making the glass disappear and releasing the python. Hermione remembered that when she was a child, she read a fairy tale book and found it so exciting that she was so excited that her whole body floated together with the book. Lauren thought of his magical eyes. He felt that his awakening of magic began with his eyes. Dumbledore waited quietly for several people to wake up from their memories, and then said, "The soul of the young wizard is not stable, and it is easier for magic power to riot when emotions are turbulent. Generally speaking, little wizards below the 3rd grade are at the bottom, and their magic power cannot even cast slightly more advanced spells. As they grow older, older students gain access to spells that are more complex and require more magic power. For example, in summoning guardians and phantoms, apart from the wizard's understanding of magic, magic is also a limiting factor. Individual adult wizards are too different to be categorized. There is a gap between ordinary wizards and aurors, there is a gap between aurors and Hogwarts professors, there is also a gap between dueling champions like Flitwick and professors like Quirrell, and beyond that there are only a few the realm of personal existence. The growth of magic power is not just a simple relationship between quantity, not how many spells a young wizard can cast, or how many spells an adult wizard can cast. It has more to do with quality. Magic of different qualities casts the same magic and has completely different effects. There are many factors involved, and no one can explain it clearly. When Lauren was having fun, he could keep releasing open door for most of the day. When he was fighting a troll, a single flame would hollow him out. Lauren asked aloud, "Principal Dumbledore, why can emotions promote the growth of magic?" "I don't know, Lauren." Dumbledore ran a hand through his beard. This answer surprised several people. There was something that the famous Dumbledore didn't know. In fact, most of the mysteries of magic remain unknown. Dumbledore explained, and then said, "Emotions may also play a bad role. Long-term suppressed emotions may lead to obscurus." "Obscurial?" Hermione exclaimed, covering her mouth. She knew this. Some unfortunate little wizards dislike their own magic, and their long-term suppressed emotions will cause their magic to mutate, causing harm to others and themselves. Silently, Dumbledore remembered what happened decades ago. Such people, such ideals. Headmaster? Headmaster Dumbledore. It wasn't until Lauren called him that Dumbledore came back to his senses. "Sorry, I'm getting older and I can't concentrate." Dumbledore continued, "When magic riots, wizards will follow an instinct. They may release some magic, become impulsive, or they may do nothing. No one can tell." Harry thought back to his state at that time and understood why he rushed towards the troll. "It turned out to be a magic riot, so I asked myself how could I be so impulsive." Harry giggled. "In fact, magic riot is following your instinct." Dumbledore repeated this sentence. Harry felt that this might not be a good thing to say, so he stammered and asked, What do you mean?" Lauren chuckled, "It means you are very impulsive." No one teased him, but Harry felt that Dumbledore's smile was glaring. Hermione tried hard to hold back a serious expression. She was very serious, if you didn't look at her shaking shoulders. "Courage is a precious quality." Dumbledore changed the subject. "In my perception, as an old wizard, the four of you all have residual magic fluctuations in your bodies." Lauren was a little surprised. He thought it was only Harry and Ron, but he and Hermione also rioted with magic. Seeming to see Lauren's doubts, Dumbledore explained, "Both life and death have powerful magic. You are on the edge of life and death. Your magic, body, and soul are all in an extraordinary state. Magic riots are just big or small." "The problem?" Hermione nodded, "I feel a little more relaxed about casting spells in class. Don't cast spells with all your strength for at least a week or two. The increase in magic power will continue for a while." Dumbledore warned a few people. Dumbledore looked at Ron. "Even now, your friend who dares to sacrifice himself still has a strong surge of magic in his body." Several people's eyes were focused on Ron. Ron was bandaged, the tip of his nose was still a little red, and his expression was calm. "He felt very guilty and thought he was the one who put us in danger," Harry said. Hermione was also a little depressed. "It's all my fault. I was too self-righteous. Ron just didn't fit the wand." Ron fell to the ground and vomited blood. She thought Ron was dead. Harry and Lauren were a little silent. It would be easy to buy Ron a wand, but Ron wouldn't accept it. Friendship would become strange if it was mixed with galleons. Peter Pettigrew's chestnut wand that Lauren had planned before was confiscated by the Ministry of Magic, and he has no other choice now. "Madame Pomfrey said his injuries are not serious," Harry said softly. Dumbledore praised, "He cherishes friendship and has the courage to sacrifice. He is a true Gryffindor." Lauren also admitted that although Ron was usually greedy, didn't like to study, and was used to complaining about things, he was really into it when something happened. "I think although the troll doesn't have any special magic materials, it can still be sold for a certain price." Dumbledore looked at the few people with a smile. "I can convert the troll into galleons and reward you with it, about 50 galleons. A wand costs 7 galleons, Hermione quickly calculated. "It's enough to buy a wand if you give Ron a share." Harry hesitated, "Is this okay?" He gave all the money from selling the troll to a few students. "Of course, you eliminated the trolls and maintained the safety of the castle. You deserve this. Dumbledore mentioned another thing, you eliminated the trolls, but you also violated the school rules by leaving the team and acting alone. Hermione looked at Dumbledore intently, as if Dumbledore was about to announce her final results at the next moment. If the merits and demerits balance out, there will be no points deducted. Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. But you have to go to Professor Snape to be detained. The little witch's expression became dejected. Lauren had been with Snape for a long time and was fine with it. Harry was about to explode. Can you change the professor? Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick, even Professor Binns. Harry felt that he would be targeted by Snape in class, let alone in solitary confinement. Snape would definitely feed him various poisons, and then let Lauren and the others prepare the antidote. Dumbledore did not change his mind, chatted with a few people for a while, told them to take a good rest, listened to Madame Pomfrey's words, and took Hermione back. You guys have a good rest, Simo and the others will come to see you tomorrow. The little witch waved her hand and closed the door.